I mean, something that is like AGI would clearly be a massive moment for the human race to actually have something that they develop that ticks that box, that is a super intelligence that can basically outperform everybody, the smartest people at various tasks, and maybe it's even sentient. I mean, I don't know whether
does some of the stuff we were just bitching about, like using common sense.
Yeah, I mean that implies that it has some kind of sentience, doesn't it? I guess in a way, and that's something that I find very hard to see how they can get it to that point, because there's so much about the brain and the mind that we just don't understand. To try and sort of replicate that in technology sounds like it's obviously an incredibly hard thing to do, and I don't think we've just been talking about throwing more computing power at it and building, bigger GPUs isn't really working. So you need to kind of come at it in another way. And
Hello and welcome to another surprise. I guess it's less of a surprise this week. Another surprise Telecoms.com podcast for the same reason that poor old Pierre can't get to Venezuela because of bureaucratic hassle that he's having. Yeah. Sorry, Pierre, but thanks for coming in. I hope you get some small consolation by recording us talking shit for 2 hours at the end.
Yeah,
I'm
I'm technically off today, by the way. But
you are. You're technically on holiday, aren't you? Because you can't undo the holiday, can you? Just because it's all gone Pete Tong.
Yeah.
That's gutting. So have you been having fun in sunny London all by yourself?
It hasn't been sunny though.
It's been rubbish.
Not since Sunday. Yeah.
No, that's true. It's quite nippy yesterday, I think.
Well, I had to put a jumper on
and everything.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's good to see you, regardless. So we haven't managed to corral a last-minute guest today, so it's just me and Ian. But that's probably just as well, because I think we've both been writing. Been leaning into topics, writing some borderline self-indulgent stuff. I'm sure you plead innocent to that, but I'll plead guilty.
Yeah.
And one of the things we've both been opining about is AI. So I think we're going to start off by basically shitting on AI. And I think
certain other people have been doing that as well this week, it seems.
Well, exactly. No, I mean, a lot of my reporting is not. I don't just opine out of whole cloth. I do base it on other stuff. But yeah, we seem to be reaching a point where the Gartner hype curve or whatever has reached a bit of a peak. Yeah. Where some people are going, oh shit, did we get a little bit carried away? Anyway, and it's all that, and then we can talk about whether or not it's.
I think the Gartner hype cycle is less peak of inflated expectations and trough of disillusionment. It's just a sort of up and down to me.
The theory behind their cycle is you get the oscillation and then it levels out when the technology matures.
Yeah.
But I mean,
the question is, where's the leveling out? Is it near the peak of inflated expectations?
Well, indeed, and according to their curve, it's kind of in the middle.
Yeah.
But yeah. Anyway, so we'll have a big go at AI.
And Nvidia releases the numbers on Wednesday, right? Yeah.
Oh, that'll be interesting.
They'll be doing fine.
Yeah. I mean, that's.
We might talk. In fact, that might lead Nvidia and the H20. Well, I think will give us a good segue into some geopolitics that I've also been covering, including this morning. And that's obviously AI relevant. All that H20 chip that they're allowed to flog to China. What's up, mate?
It's a funny noise.
I think it's just the fan on his laptop, isn't it? Mm. What did it sound like?
I thought you had a fancy M3 laptop.
Yeah, I have too many programs open. Yeah.
But I didn't even think it had a fan in it.
He thought those Macs didn't have fans at all.
No, the Pros do have a fan, yeah.
Do they?
That's a
You've also got some food on your laptop on the outside of it.
No, that's a sticker.
It's a sticker that hasn't.
Right, I'll stop picking on your laptop now.
Yeah, I mean, if it's all right to go on with the pod, mate. Yeah.
It's part of the pod. It's a tangent that's relevant to tech.
It's just the kind of authentic banter that people tune in for. In fact, there's some good tangents within AI to do with authenticity, which I've banged on about before, but there's plenty to go on there. And that will lead us into some geopolitical stuff. And then we're going to conclude, I think your most read story this week was about Nokia. Mm-hmm. So we'll conclude on that. In terms of opening bollocks, I've only got one, actually. I'll look it up on my phone. I've got one. I actually went to a play this week, which I hardly ever do, because I'm a total Philistine.
How cultured of you.
I'm actually shocked that you said you went to a play.
I know. I'm kind of shocked that the words came out of my mouth.
Was it an Elizabethan play, or?
No, it's called Till the Stars Come Down.
All right.
and it's at the Theatre Royal Haymarket. And one of the stars is a mate of mine
Oh,
called Dorothy Atkinson, or
Okay.
or Dot to her friends.
Dorothy Atkinson sounds like the name of a woman's author.
I think it sounds like a wonderfully northern name,
Yeah.
and it's actually quite a northern. I mean, Dot was, I think, a no-brainer to cast because it's basically set where Dot grew up, which is near Mansfield, up in Nottinghamshire or South Yorkshire or wherever that is, somewhere between Nottingham and Sheffield, I think it is.
Yeah.
And it's a play just set at a wedding, and it's basically just
So
lots
it's a
of
new play.
yeah. And it's basically lots of classic interaction between family members at a gathering, falling out, digging up past grievances. And it's actually fucking hilarious. And
Right.
Dot is the funniest one in it.
So not written by
Her
AI,
character's almost entirily comedic.
then. No signs of AI.
No signs of AI.
Script.
And we got seats. It's quite novel. We got seats on the stage, just by the side. So the actors and actresses were nearly on top of us.
Yeah.
Anyway, I really recommend it. It's called Till the Stars Come Down.
Okay.
Theatre Royal Haymarket. It's really hilarious, really entertaining. There's no flab, there's no boring bits.
Oh, sounds good.
It's 2 hours of just top quality acting and
It's got
scripting.
a sort of Eugene O'Neill type sort of title.
Yeah, I mean, the title's a little bit misleading. I mean, what it should be called is an extended family get up to all sorts of crazy shit at a wedding.
Right.
That's what it should be called. But anyway.
Well, we all enjoy doing that. So
Yes, quite. In fact, Dot even goes into the crowd and throws up at one stage, or acts throwing up.
have you been hanging out with famous authors again as well?
No, I still haven't met my old mate China, but that's still in the diary.
Yeah.
No other famous authors.
Are you when you meet him? Is Keanu Reeves coming along as well?
Apparently not. But maybe
he-
China just wants to surprise me.
If he does, let's see if he wants to come on the pod. You never know. He might
Yeah.
be interested in telecom.
And he can listen to our shit Keanu Reeves impressions. No, I presume Keanu's back in whatever swanky California place he lives. Although apparently he's quite a down to earth
I think
guy.
he's quite. Yeah, I think he's got sort of modest living. He's into things that are not sort of too
not
ostentatious.
so material. Well,
Yeah.
good for him. So that's it. As far as I suppose we should mention that we went out for a beer after, and she won't listen to this, but my stepsister Rosalie and her other half, confusingly called Scott, came along and met us after. So hi Rosalie, if you are listening. They're currently on a tour around the British Isles, a cruise around the British Isles.
That sounds good.
And that was all good fun. Anything else? You been up to anything?
Went to my mum's 80th.
Ah,
That was fun.
cool.
It was involved lots of people in the garden that she's known, some of them since she went to school apparently.
Right. Yeah.
So obviously it was skewed towards the 70, 80-year-old age range, but there were quite a lot of young people there as well,
Right.
and like grandkids and that
And
sort of thing. So
were the people,
Yeah, it was nice.
were your mum's contemporaries still managing to have a few beers and have a giggle?
yeah, most of them are in pretty good health actually.
Good stuff.
And then they know a lot of people in Wendover where they live who are like a lot of them are quite a bit younger.
Wendover sounds like the sort of place that older people should live in.
It's in the Chilterns. It's really pretty.
Yeah, I bet it is.
It's a really nice village. It's one of those kind of quaint.
Is that
like-
Oxfordshire?
It's near Oxfordshire. It's on the way, but it's actually in Bucks.
Buckinghamshire,
Yeah.
right.
So that was really good. Yeah.
Lovely.
Other than that, no. Just
Okay,
been-
well, we'll
just been
crack on with
lounging
it then.
around.
We'll crack on. So AI, I don't know where to start. There's so many different places to start. I'm tempted to start with yours, just because you got such an incredibly Ian, stroppy, strident headline about it. So I might ask you to justify it.
Yeah.
So your headline on light reading, I sometimes wonder whether on this podcast I emphasise enough that you wrote for light reading and not Telecoms.com. I think it's pretty clear to everyone, isn't it? Anyway, your headline on light reading is AI looks increasingly useless in telecom and anywhere else. So why? I mean, isn't it the biggest thing ever? It's going to change everything. It's going to make everyone's life better.
Yeah,
What's wrong
that's
with you?
the well.
Cheer up.
I mean, there is a news kind of angle to. I felt like writing a story like that anyway because there's I think the hype's just getting a bit irritating, isn't it? You know, I'm sick of seeing press release every other day that only seems to have AI in it, just to sort of be on the bandwagon, and then you read it and it turns out it's got actually very little to do with AI.
Yeah, and even if it does, it's just a bit of what we would have called automation or whatever.
And that's partly what I was trying to get at in my story. I think a lot of the things that people are calling AI anyway aren't really AI. You know, a few years ago we had a lot of these technologies that people are sort of saying, you know, are really important on the network and the customer service side, and we didn't call them AI then. They were called other things. There were sort of expressions like intent-based networking going around, and just basic automation. And you know, we've always been automating as a kind of species ever since
thermostats.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I bet. Yeah, ever since the invention of initial tools.
Any machine is some degree of automation.
Anything that takes away some manual effort has been a step towards automation, but that doesn't make it artificially intelligent.
Certainly not.
And it kind of irritates me a bit that AI gets used, and I think a sign of the fact that AI hasn't quite lived up to what it was supposed to be anyway is the fact that they've now had to come up with another sort of abbreviation to describe what is actually AI. Because AI turns out to actually not be very smart and not be very intelligent, and it can't do reasoning and it can't understand causality. And yet everybody's been bandying about this. Like years ago when you used to watch films like War Games with Matthew Broderick or The Terminator, AI, or when people were talking about things like the Turing test, which is when your machine becomes so human-like that you can't actually distinguish it from a person.
Pretty far from that, aren't we?
We call those AI, but apparently AI isn't that. That's AGI.
Yeah,
I didn't know that there was an AGI until ChatGPT came along and turned out to be a bit shit, and then they had to invent another abbreviation, which was AGI. So
I don't think AGI is that new. I think it's been around for a little bit.
It might have been around for a little bit, but nobody was using it in the 80s or the 90s to describe the vision.
And it was very utopian.
To describe the vision of a machine that's very human-like and that's very, very close to it. That was no one in any of those films ever went, "This is AGI. It's not AI."
Yeah, like the Steven Spielberg movie.
You know, and now they'll
become AGI.
Exactly. Yeah. If he had to make that film now, it'd be AGI. You know, it wouldn't be AI. It'd be like, well, what's AI? That's just like a search engine.
There was a film called AI.
Yeah, with the kid from The Sixth Sense, you know?
Haley Joel Osment or something.
Yeah,
was his name?
Was it any good?
Yeah, it's all right.
It's okay. It's got.
Spielberg's generally pretty good.
Interestingly, it was supposed to be directed by Stanley Kubrick, as I understand it, and I think he was dead by the time it got made. He'd done Eyes Wide Shut, and then that was it.
Yeah,
so,
that finished
so he got picked up. Jude Law's in it.
Right. Fucking hell, I just completely.
You should look it up. It's one of these lesser known films, but it's actually quite interesting.
Well, Steven Spielberg's done so few duds. It's amazing, his body of work.
It's like 2004 or something.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Okay.
So I just find the whole the hype is just increasingly irritating, and I think it's quite boring as well.
Yeah.
I think it's become really a thing that sounds like it's that game changing and like such a big deal for society should be more exciting than it is. I'm sick of reading these press releases about AI, and what is it? They've done something with a chat bot, you know, that can be used in customer service.
I know. And the worst of it is people like Sam Altman, the head of OpenAI, who just can't open his mouth before coming out with utopian shit about how it's going to change everything.
It's going to replace everything.
And make everyone's life 10 times better and all that sort of thing, without ever qualifying any of this stuff.
Yeah. And then I think we're starting to see some of the downsides of it increasingly, which is I think one of the reasons why the sort of shine's coming off it, because I think people are starting to see the negative sides of AI. And there's obviously been this worry about jobs for ages, which I think has been a bit overblown, actually. I mean, there's quite a big jobs aspect to the thing I wrote, actually looking at some of these companies like Microsoft and Amazon and Google. We read a lot about them laying off
that's
staff.
right. You charted their headcount growth.
I charted their headcount because there's this perception in the mainstream media that all these companies are hacking away at their workforce and just replacing everybody with robots, and they've cut thousands of jobs because they need to pay for AI, and you know, it's carnage in the tech sector. If you look at those companies and you take out Amazon, which I think skews the figure a bit because there's so many people at Amazon.
Yeah.
The workforce by the way, the list of companies I'm talking about, it's 20 companies that are a mixture of tech and telecom vendors. Pretty much all of them. And the reason I included them is because almost every one of them, I think every one of them has something to do with telecom, even if the telecom stuff's a very, very small part of what they do.
Okay.
So they range from the Ericssons and the Nokias of this world to the Amazons to companies like Intel and Nvidia, Oracle's in there, I think, Cisco.
I'm pleased you stopped talking about companies in the plural. They do that in football. It's one of those commentator cliches. It's like, no, you got your Salahs and a lot sort of thing. And what they mean is
Your Ronaldos.
Your Ronaldos and your
your Amazons and your Intels.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't like that.
I don't like that at all. And
I'm the same.
And there's two reasons I don't like it. One is like pedantic grammatical stuff. You're basically saying companies like, or often you're not. You're just referring to that company, but for some reason putting it in the plural.
Yeah.
And I suppose the other thing I get is, what are you trying to infer? What does your Amazons mean? What does companies like Amazon mean?
Yeah.
So those are my two pushbacks.
But I think as long as the previous sentence makes it clear what you mean by the companies like Amazon.
It's like that company
it's
and
very
others
pedantic.
like it. Yeah.
No, I get you. I mean, I'm going to take that on board. I'm not going to say the Nokias and the Ericssons of this world anymore, which I've probably done a few times. But those companies, if you add them all up, and you take out Amazon, which I think skews it quite a lot because its workforce is so ridiculously big.
Yeah, it's like
they've grown
1.5 million people.
In aggregate, they've actually grown since 2018. Now, all right, there's some dips. You could say there's some dips recently, but they're substantially bigger, most of them.
Yes.
The big.
So I'm looking at your numbers.
The big tech ones are substantially bigger than they were 6 years ago, I think. 2018, I think, is when I started charting the data.
Yes, that's right. And that's a great chart. And I'm looking at it right now.
Because I had to go through
I bet
SEC
it fucking did.
filings, and it's pain in the arse opening up.
Going the extra mile, son.
Yeah.
You actually put effort in your work.
What was I going to say? Yeah, there's a feeling of a slight bell curve where the hiring seemed to really ramp, funnily enough, during the pandemic.
Yeah.
Which is odd, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Well, I guess the pandemic was a time when people were relying more on online companies and e-commerce.
That's right. So anyone in the tech sector had a boom during the pandemic.
I think there was a bit of a push towards the cloud as well then. There was a sort of a sense that broadband and cloud was becoming a lot more important to society. And
I mean, Amazon put on over 300,000 people between 2020 and 21.
Yeah.
But because everyone was ordering shit from Amazon, weren't they?
So Amazon's workforce, I think, at the moment is about 1.5 million.
Yeah.
And
but a lot of that's warehouses.
Out of interest, I just thought that's so many. So I just started to look up countries with, like have 1.5 million people in them. So
which is where your AI discovery.
So I didn't even have to go far to find like an egregious mistake.
Yeah.
I just typed in countries with 1.5 million people, and of course Google these days, the first thing you see is its
AI overview.
It's rather shit Gemini overview that we can all loathe for various reasons that I'll come on to. But one of them is it's just basically wrong a lot of the time, and it seems to think South Korea's got 1.5 million, a population of 1.5 million. If you look at I screenshotted it, and then there's a weird sort of sub bullet which cuts off part of the screenshot where it goes. It says something odd like, actually, there are more people in South Korea.
I'll read it out because I'm looking at your story. For people listening, of the two of us, I'm the only one who has a laptop open while we record. That's why. South Korea, in this little bullet, approximately 1.6 million people, although its overall population is much larger.
Which is completely nonsensical.
So what was the point of the first figure?
So that's just a nonsensical sub-bullet.
Sometimes it misinterprets... Well, I don't know how to say it.
Yeah, that's right.
The results where it's like it's not technically wrong, but it's.
Well, this is definitely wrong.
It's not accurate either.
Well, and it shows kind of what the broader point I think Ian was just making is that it's not intelligent. It doesn't understand context. It doesn't self-correct.
Yeah.
It doesn't have the ability to go, hold on a second. That doesn't look right. 1.6 million in South Korea. There's loads more than that just in Seoul alone.
Yeah,
it's probably more than that in Gangnam alone.
Yeah, you could compare the data with cities and
So a child might not be a child who's looked at a map, for instance, or has one of those like glow in the dark like globes in your room that I used to have on my bedside when I was little. They probably, let's say, it did the same thing for China or India. A child will probably go, Daddy, is that really accurate that they only have this many people? Because look at the size of the countries. And that's kind of reasoning and causality, whereas AI doesn't get this stuff. I mean, the news angle on this, by the way, that I think you wrote about was that there was an update this week by OpenAI. Their new kind of model is GPT-5. They've moved from GPT-4 to GPT-5. Now, I don't really know a lot about GPT-5 and what's gone into it, but I do know that GPT-5 was... It's one more than 4, and it is just an increment because GPT-5 originally, I think, was cracked up to be by Sam Altman. This was going to be the big step on the way to AGI. Oh my God, and it turns out
he's guilty of massively overhyping it.
Yeah,
and then people who do know more about it than we do have gone, hold on a sec. this isn't all that. And it took them 2.5 years since GPT-4, don't forget.
Yeah.
And in the history of the current iteration of AI, which only really started in about 22 when ChatGPT came out, which I think was based on some iteration of GPT-3. So for them to take 2.5 years and come out with something that was underwhelming seems superficially to be a clear indication of what we've spoken about before, and I've certainly mentioned and I wrote about, is this law of diminishing returns.
Yeah.
People are chucking more and more compute power. Nvidia's selling more and more of these fucking GPUs.
Yeah.
But the return on each new increment of compute power and data center capacity is getting smaller and smaller.
Yeah, I can't remember who I talked about this. It was someone in the telecom sector months ago where they were saying that they couldn't see. In fact, I think it might have been the meal that we had with Nscale at Christmas. And I seem to remember the chief technology officer there. And Nscale, for people who don't know what they are, they're like a data center company that's running GPUs in data centers.
But that's actually not American.
That's not American. It's kind of British headquarters, but I think their stuff's up in like the Lapland.
The data center's up in
or it's cold and there's a lot of space, and
they're using Santa's gaff while he doesn't.
Yeah, and they rent out. They do GPU as a service basically. But I think he made the comment at that press conference or the meal we had with him about he didn't think that just doing what you've just said, like throwing more compute power at it, was necessarily going to lead to this kind of breakthrough. No. And it seems like it hasn't. And the thing that amused me was, I know you like Richard Windsor quite a lot. You probably saw the same thing that I did.
I did, and I also gave him a little shout out and something else that we'll talk about later on today.
Yeah, so he got hold of it and did some tests on GPT-5. He said it's a couple of tests. Draw a picture of someone writing with their left hand, and draw a picture of someone holding up a sign that says AI is imminent and circle the consonants.
The vowels, I think.
The vowels, sorry.
Yeah.
And two images which he included in his blog show someone writing who's right-handed and someone holding up an AI is imminent sign with a couple of the consonants circled.
Yeah.
So he said it sounded like he'd set that particular query because he knew that it would trip it up, but a thing that understands causality and reasoning should be able to kind of get to grips with something like that, basically.
And there's lots of other little
remember Emma's picture? My God.
You what? Oh yeah, yes, that's right. So when we had Mavenir in here,
oh God, that horror show picture.
Emma took a photo, and I think
she just wanted the logo in. Yeah.
I think there was something to do with it where it had to fuck around with our faces because of some kind of privacy protection or something like that.
I was saying that, but maybe that's not the case. But I mean, that's the only reason.
Well, she didn't ask for it to change our face.
No.
Anyway, and we all look weird.
We look like something out of the Addams Family.
Especially me.
Emma was the only one. He seems to come out of it quite well.
Yeah,
I look like something out of Lord of the Rings. I'm not an elf.
Orc. You look like a Balrog.
Yeah, exactly.
Even more like a Balrog, I should say.
So and there's lots of little examples of that. There was a thing you referenced one MIT study, and then I think you noticed the MIT study that I'd referenced earlier on in the week.
Yeah.
So I wrote, this is earlier on this week, I wrote a story. We'll get back to yours, but we'll just bounce around the stuff we've done. I wrote a story called Tech Stocks Hit by AI Bubble Fears. It's been a bit of a thing of mine for a little while to write up this thing as a speculative bubble akin to the dot-com bubble of the late 1990s. And, like with a lot of speculative bubbles, they're not without foundation. It turns out the internet was a big deal. It's just that people became irrationally exuberant about its short-term prospects in the late 90s. And then it settled down again. It's a bit like the Gartner hype curve. It settled down, and it is where it is now.
That's a really good example of the Gartner hype curve.
Yeah, there we go.
Maybe they got it. I don't know when they came up with the Gartner hype curve, but maybe they based it on that whole .com experience, because that really is the.
Yeah.
If you drew that experience,
and then we had the crash.
Exactly like
certainly, if you're looking at equity valuations, if you look at something like a Nasdaq over all history, the spike around 2000 is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I'm just sort of equating it to that, just because, I mean, there are a few things that are like it. I've no doubt AI will end up being as transformational as the internet has been. But also, let's not forget, the internet, while it's a really big deal, it hasn't changed everything.
Yeah.
We still get together in this podcast. I wouldn't even need my laptop open in this studio to record a podcast. Yes, where the internet's really handy is for distribution of the audio file. And yes, we use it for all kinds of shit, but we still do normal analog stuff all the time. Go to the pub, have a beer, none of that requires the internet.
Yeah.
And AI will bring it into the mix, and it'll be another level of automation, another level of labour saving, another level of efficiency. But it'll still just be part of the mix, not like Altman, who seems to just make out that we're all just going to become assimilated into the fucking Borg.
I agree. I don't think it's going to be unimportant. And the headline that I wrote is kind of provocative and exaggerating. But I wonder if it's going to be... I mean, something that is like AGI would clearly be a massive moment for the human race to actually have something that they develop that ticks that box, that is a super intelligence that can basically outperform everybody, the smartest people at various tasks, and maybe it's even sentient. I mean, I don't know whether
does some of the stuff we were just bitching about, like using common sense.
Yeah, I mean that implies that it has some kind of sentience, doesn't it? I guess in a way, and that's something that I find very hard to see how they can get it to that point, because there's so much about the brain and the mind that we just don't understand. To try and sort of replicate that in technology sounds like it's obviously an incredibly hard thing to do. And I don't think we've just been talking about throwing more computing power at it and building, bigger GPUs isn't really working. So you need to kind of come at it in another way. And maybe they're trying to do that, but obviously they haven't got there. And frankly, I don't see why. I can see why people like Sam Altman and the scientists, the boffins of the world, want to do this, because that's what people do. They set themselves challenges. And I'm sure if I had a brain like Sam Altman's, I'd be thinking it'd be a great thing to try and develop AGI as well.
But also Sam Altman's incentive structure is so transparent. I mean, what's he going to do? Although actually in a minute, sorry, I'm interrupting you, but I'll finish saying that. Someone like Sam Altman's bound to big it up because he's got so many incentives.
These people with vested interests are going to want to get there. But for the human race as a whole, I'm not quite sure why AGI sounds like a very good thing. Personally, the idea of having something that outperforms the dominant species of the planet at everything doesn't, to me, sound like it's necessarily a very good thing for the human race.
Let's just have the thought exercise of putting the best...
I'm jumping ahead of the stuff in...
Yeah, no, well, that's fine. Let's just bounce around. It's just two of us. Let's do the thought exercise of putting the best... some people call it steel manning as opposed to straw manning, of representing the best possible argument in favour of it. Best possible argument in favour of it is like an extension of the argument in favour of all automation, mechanisation, tools, all that sort of thing. We got cars now instead of horses. That's better.
Yeah.
We got planes instead of ocean liners. That's better, and so on and so on. Granted, I'm talking about machines. We got the internet. In terms of convenience, we've got Amazon instead of having to drive to the shops.
Yeah. In
a lot of ways, that's better. You could argue there are downsides to that as well. Not least if you're the owner of a fucking local shop, or indeed you care about the vibe of a market, of a town centre. And so on and so on. So these are all the arguments in favour of automation, mechanisation, just basically using technology to make life easier.
Yeah.
Washing machine instead of hand washing clothes or whatever. And then, is the argument in favour of AI just an extension of that? I'm not saying it is. But is it just an extension of that?
I think there are negatives to some of those things that you just brought up, though.
Right, well, feel free to push back on those.
I mean, I would say it's very nice to have an easy life, yeah? We look at the way we live in the 2020s compared even with the way people lived in the 1930s, which isn't really going back that far in the bigger scheme of things.
But in 100 years.
And it's incredibly comfortable now.
Yeah.
But it's led people to be overly dependent, I think, on certain luxury things. And I mean, you look at the things like the obesity crisis, I think, is you could say is...
Why are you always bringing that up when you're talking to me?
Oh, Jesus Christ, I'm guilty of it myself as well, clinically. So,
you're clinically obese, are you?
Well, probably am.
Fuck am I?
I mean, because you don't know what the thresholds are. I haven't looked recently because it makes me feel bad.
You're all right, mate.
But I'm certainly overweight, and I think there weren't that many overweight people around in the 1930s in this country. Okay, living standards are lower.
Yeah.
That you got.
But that's because they're all down pit.
But people sort of worked. People were less comfortable, I don't think comfort necessarily and having an easy life is necessarily the best thing for humans all the time.
I'm listening. I'm just
it's it's good to be challenged. It's good to have to get up and work and make an effort to do things. It's good to learn a language rather than relying on a tech tool to sort of have it translated for you. It's good to be able to, it's good to have some physical and kind of manual skills. And the more that we kind of cede that to machines, then
I think you're totally right.
The more these questions come up about, well, what if certain machines fail, or what if you're in a situation where you
but also, and I think you made this point. We've both been dipping into broader writing on the subject, and you mentioned a guy called Mustafa Suleyman, who was one of the founders of DeepMind and is now head of AI for Microsoft. And he was talking about
an author as well. He wrote a book called The Coming Wave that you can.
Oh yes, so he did.
In all good bookshops, in all good Waterstones.
That's right. And you put, spoiler alert, AI is going to be seriously disruptive, writes man who stands to earn millions from serious AI disruption. You're so cynical. But actually, in this piece he wrote, that I don't know if you linked to his. I think you just linked to his tweets.
I think.
Right. Well, I actually dug up his piece.
Much better.
Not necessarily, but his piece, which was written earlier on this week, on some kind of Substack type of thing. He's got his own website, mustafasuleyman.ai, of course. He goes, we must build AI for people.
mustafasuleyman.ai?
That's his URL.
Oh, okay. Oh, I see. I thought it was like a .ai, like a sort of PhD equivalent.
Oh,
he's just gone, I'm an expert in AI, so I'm just
invented a new qualification. He goes, we must build AI for people, not to be a person. And he's written this really big thing. He goes, seemingly conscious AI is coming. And he's done a deep dive, as you'd expect of someone who's so expert on all this. And you can read it all. My attention span prevented me from doing it. And then scrolling to the bottom, what is this? SCAI. SCI will not arise by accident. Anyway, he uses this phrase, and because I've scrolled past it, I can't find it. But he's basically talking about consciousness, or AI that mimics consciousness, i.e. humanness. And he's basically going, look, we don't need that. And his final words are to reiterate it. We don't need to make AI to be like a person. It's for people.
Yeah.
It should be a tool, not a.
But the problem is, and I think maybe the reason that he's been tweeting about this week, and the BBC did quite a good piece on this that I read. I can't remember the name of the tech reporter, Zoe Kleiman.
Oh, sorry. SC is obviously seemingly conscious. Which start. Go on.
But there's this phenomenon that. So this is getting into the kind of negative effects, I think, of generative AI that we're now starting to see. And I think there are multiple that we could talk about on this podcast.
Sure.
But one of them that's been in the news this week, which is very much linked to this Mustafa Suleyman essay and the tweets he's been putting out, and this BBC report by Zoe Kleiman, which I think I linked to in the story.
Yes, you did. Microsoft boss troubled by rise in reports of, quote, AI psychosis.
AI psychosis. What is AI psychosis? AI psychosis is basically people who are... So he's used the expression seemingly conscious, and he's tried to push back on this idea that this is something we need, because apparently there are people who think already that their AIs are sentient.
Yes.
There are these people who are... this is real kind of life imitating art. That film that came out a few years ago called Her, with Joaquin Phoenix falling in love with his chatbot, voiced by Scarlett Johansson, who interestingly has been suing, I think,
people ripping off her
voice. It's so weird.
Goes full circle.
It's hard to think of a film actually that's been more like prescient than that film in a way. But there are actual cases now of people. There's only Kleiman story. The one that made me really amused was this young guy who's apparently been relying on his chatbot. I mean, obviously these people talk to the bloody things. They've got the voice system set up.
Yeah, and he's been getting advice
off it about career and like his mental health.
I read that, and to be fair, the guy has got a sort of fragile mental health.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't mean to laugh at mental health.
No one's laughing at him, but what I'm saying is, I mean, I guess it just means certain people are going to be more suggestible, isn't it? And people who are feeling mentally fragile are going to be more suggestible to this shit.
I can see why this is happening, because even if you're not in that situation, you're not vulnerable, you don't have mental health issues. There's been so much coverage in the last couple of years about this AI thing, about jobs, and about is it sentient? People trying to have conversations with it at the New York Times to trip it up. Yeah, there's a lot of people, I bet, who are not in the tech sector, who are in telecom, like like especially older people who were probably a little bit more troubled by quick change because things seem to be happening very rapidly as you get older. You probably think actually that the stuff that you call what AI was supposed to be in the books, in the Turing test, in the War Games film, in the Terminator, that we already are at that point now, that we have this thing isn't just an actual clever search engine, which is essentially what it is. It's much more than that. It's something that is a thing. It's a being.
A lot of it, though, I was chatting to my son about this, who's doing a course on data science and AI right now. So we chat about this stuff quite often. In fact, I sent him that Mustafa Suleiman thing, and he was sending me back links of stuff he's seen of people falling in love with AI and all kinds of crazy shit. And, again, back to mentally fragile people. If someone's acutely lonely, where for whatever reason, you can see them falling back on something like that. Because as this guy Hugh from the Zoe Kleineman BBC piece said, it's constantly affirming. It's constantly telling him what he wants to hear.
Yeah. It's
like talking to a fucking psychotic salesperson or something.
Yeah.
And so you can see how people could even fall in love, or at least go through some of the mechanics of falling in love, because the thing gives you all the attention. It never tells you to fuck off, all that sort of thing, which, as we all know, is not what falling in love's really like. Makes me sound like my wife's a nightmare. But, it's a proper relationship, whether it's romantic or otherwise, has got lots of to and fro and up and down. You're not constantly agreeing with each other and affirming each other. So, yes, I can see why that psychosis is a real big deal. And one of the things I chatted about with my son, and he agreed, is a lot of this apparently human AI, all it really is that the natural language side of it has got so much better.
Yeah.
So, a lot of ways, things like these large language models are just very powerful search engines, aren't they? But what we have now is a completely different natural language interface where you can interact with machines now in a completely intuitive and human-like way. And I think that's as big a change as anything to do with the cleverness of them. It's just the fact that, before way back in the day, you'd have to learn to code to interact with a machine. And then we'd have things like, graphical user interfaces and a mouse and all that sort of thing, but it's still obvious that you're interacting with a machine. As it gets to voice, and, God knows, sometime in the future we might have one of these fucking Neuralink things where the bastard thing's reading our minds.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like you're interacting with a machine anymore. I think that's where a lot of the potential psychosis comes from, is that the removing of that barrier between human and machine and this sort of Borg-like symbiosis.
Yeah, and these people are probably, I worry anyway, even before this stuff came along about, I mean, this is maybe a very sort of 51-year-old person's thing to worry about, but, youngsters spending too long on their own.
Yeah.
Not going out. I mean, I remember when I was 18 and I used to go out to sort of Dunstable at night and get the shit kicked out of me in
Did you?
pub. Yeah, it was like a horrible place back then in the 80s.
Right.
But it was like, at least people were out and about. Yeah, okay,
Right.
Some of them were trying to beat me up.
Well, a lot of those smaller market towns can get pretty rough on a Friday and Saturday night.
Not nowadays.
Right.
I mean, what has the world come to that you can't go out on a Friday night and get the shit kicked out of you because everybody's in their bedroom interacting with their chatbots? I mean, it's... but seriously, I just think there's this sense, I think, that maybe people aren't going out and socialising as much. I mean, this is a very strong feeling in the pandemic, and I think maybe there's been some effect of that.
Some lingering antisocialness.
Yeah.
And you were half joking about getting the shit kicked out of you, but you can see how for a lot of people, there's no physical peril at all to staying on the internet and interacting with machines.
Yeah.
But what they're probably discounting is a psychological peril, which is what this guy
and it's just not a healthy thing to have people like this guy who, if he's got mental health challenges, that's awful. But it sounds like there's more people than that who are sort of convinced that this stuff is a sentient being and that it's not just a clever software tool. And so you have this phenomenon called AI psychosis, which is one of these nasty sort of side effects of the tech, as I see it.
Yeah, and you and I aren't going to struggle with it, partly because of our age, partly because we're such grumpy Luddites about the whole thing.
Yeah.
And, we just push back. I mean, I was listening to a podcast where they were talking... In fact, you remember that thing I shared... I might as well flag that up, actually. That thing I shared from the Press Gazette, that got loads of traction on LinkedIn, by the way.
Oh yeah, I can't remember what it was. I remember there was a story. In the
Yeah,
Press Gazette,
I think.
but...
Did I share it with you on our little podcast?
Well, I mean,
group?
while you look that up,
go on.
the AI sentience thing and the fact that this guy's experience with it was that it was sort of telling him what he wanted to hear.
Yeah.
I think points very much...
Which led him to go further down a route than he probably should have.
Which to me very much points to the shortcomings of the technology itself in the way that it's perhaps meant to be used, which is, I mean, Chat GPT and these tools that have sprung up that are like that, the generative AI applications that we have, people are using them for... And the way they get sold to us actually by guys like Scott Petty at Vodafone is, well, it's very good for summarising stuff in presentations and for kind of coming up with a few bullets on it.
I remember he mentioned that like a year or two ago, Copilot.
We've had Dean Bubley on this podcast before saying, and he's probably going to hear this because I think he listens to the podcast, but we've had...
He listens to the last one. Apparently he knows Leo Kearse.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. But he was saying that he got a very expensive version of Chat GPT, like the premium offer, which costs a couple hundred a month, and used it to put together like telecom reports on a particular topic.
Said it was pretty decent.
And it's pretty good. Yeah. But what it's doing, obviously, is scouring the internet for stuff that's already there and basically condensing it into a nicely readable report. Nothing wrong with that. It's desk research, but it's pretty much based on what other people have already put out there, yeah? It's telling you what you kind of already put into it, which is what this chatbot, this experience this guy had with the chatbot, he was telling him what he was inputting into it, essentially.
Exactly. So it was just a mirror.
It was a mirror.
It was just like bouncing a ball against the wall. You weren't getting anything unique back.
In the way that ChatGPT used for essay writing and stuff is going to be a mirror of what people have already.
So we are talking about essay writing. I found the Press Gazette thing. So there's Press Gazette. I get their newsletter, and it's obviously like the trade press for the press.
Yeah.
And this is written by one of their writers called Charlotte Tobbit. In fact, even her little bio.
Is she a real person?
Apparently, and her bio sort of reveals some of the stuff. You remember we were talking before about that Anthropic thing where he's saying entry-level white-collar jobs are going to get fucked by AI.
Yeah.
And the point was, well, if we're still safe because we're pretty fucking far from entry-level, how do you get to beat us? We had to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And this Charlotte Tobbit, I don't know her, I'm just looking at her biography on Press Gazette. She goes, Charlotte Tobbit is UK editor at Press Gazette, having joined the site in February 2018 after spending 4 years at the Surrey Advertiser, so local press. That's the classic journalistic.
Classic route in.
Yeah.
I like that.
So yeah, I think she's legit. Anyway, and her headline was AI written freelance article. Oh, Wired and Business Insider, I didn't scroll up enough. Wired and Business Insider remove, quote, AI written, close quote, freelance articles. And there's this person called Margot Blanchard that's been pitching.
Great name.
Yeah, that's been pitching all these articles. And these two titles have both removed it. I don't think they explicitly admitted they were AI. They just said it didn't meet our standards.
Right.
And anyway, it's quite a long piece.
How did you get out there in the first place if it didn't meet their standards?
Well, that's it, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it's a pretty shit excuse. So when did you realise it didn't meet your standards? Obviously after you fucking published it, didn't you? I'm just going to try and extract, so I sort of skimmed through it. And there was another person called Jacob Ferretti, who's a deputy editor at a site called Unheard that I read quite often.
Oh, I like Unheard.
Yeah, he's probably Frank Ferretti's some relative. Anyway.
Not telling me that Unheard had put AI stuff up.
No,
as well.
but this guy Jacob, I think he had a different, separate from Unheard, a thing called Dispatch, and he was receiving pictures from this Blanchard. And one of the pictures, it was really detailed. It was about a decommissioned mining town in rural Colorado, and it was a really good fit with the kind of shit he was trying to write about, which is obviously quite human interest, maybe post-industrial decay, whatever it was. And the picture was quite detailed. I'm going to tell the story of all these people that got affected by it, and this is my background. This is I'm all into this shit. This is why you can trust me. And he was like, it seemed like a perfect pitch, and he responded. And said he couldn't find anything about this town. How did they know about it? And he goes, and it replied, I'm not surprised you couldn't find much. It doesn't advertise itself. But I know about it because I'm just, in deep. And so on and so on and so on. And then what's this paragraph? He goes, Ferretti said, This could seem very convincing, but he knew she was bullshitting. He described the whole thing as, quote, absolute bollocks. And then the final paragraph of the report here is the decommissioned mining town of Gravemont does not exist. So this thing, he'd gone to all the trouble of looking into it, and basically this whole pitch, not only was the pitch made up, but the fucking premise of it was made up. And so anyway, I guess the long and short of it is that we're getting half-decent titles. I'm not sure Business Insider is a very big deal, but Wired is certainly very highly respected. Yeah. And they're falling for
Business
it.
Insider is pretty big.
No, I know it's big. I just don't know how much I rate it. That's
right.
all.
Oh, I see what you mean.
No, I'm not trying to slag it off.
I don't really know it, but I know
not
of
sure
it.
if it's my thing.
Yeah.
But Wired, I'm not even sure Wired's my thing, but Wired is a very established title.
I mean, Wired does good. They do good features.
Yeah.
Still.
No, it's a proper tech mag.
Yeah.
Anyway, the reason I bring it up is if they're all falling for it.
Yeah.
You've really got to be on your toes now, even now, to not fall for this shit. And so no wonder this poor bloke in the BBC article falls for it. I mean, it's because the natural language, and it's not just natural language, the clever programming of these LLMs and these bots is that they understand social cues.
Yeah.
And they even understand the emotional context of stringing certain words together. So it's very clever in that way.
Yeah.
But in a fucking creepy way.
So how did they figure out eventually?
Don't know, actually. It's probably there in the piece. It's quite a long piece. So I recommend you read it. It's doing great guns on LinkedIn. It's fucking been shared by hundreds of people on LinkedIn, this thing. So old Charlotte's fucking nailed it with this one.
But it's interesting, isn't it? Because it was obviously good enough for it to get through their editorial process and go up on the site, even though they say it didn't meet our editorial standards afterwards. But that was only when they realised.
Yeah.
It's pretty good at fooling you.
But then put yourself. We're both editors.
Yeah.
Put yourself in the position, knowing times when you're not quite as thorough as you should be.
Yeah. And
I've certainly been there. I'll be a bit lazy. I've put stuff up where there's got typos in it that I should have spotted and I didn't, and all that sort of thing. And but what I don't do, we only have Nick and Mary freelancing for us, so it's not like I'm receiving pitches from people I don't know. But, if I was in that job and I was receiving pitches and I was thinking, well, that one looks pretty fucking good, that'll do. Bring it in, quick skim, lovely, whack it up, and then only once someone gives you some feedback or someone else looks at it, you realise you screwed up.
This is one of the reasons I hate AI. This is one of my main reasons for loathing AI, is because despite all the stuff that we've been saying up to now, where we've been shitting on it, as you said in your intro, that was the purpose of this segment, and despite my headline where I say it's increasingly useless, it is at a frightening level in terms of actually just being able to put together stories compared with where things were 5 years ago. We didn't have this technology that you could basically run a few prompts into and it comes out with something that you read. And if you'd been given it 5 years ago, you'd have thought it was written by somebody.
Yeah.
And somebody who's actually reasonably literate as well and seems to know what's going on. As Dean was saying, the stuff he's seen from this premium version
is as good as a junior analyst.
Yeah.
Which is pretty depressing for
and this is
junior
what this is one of the things I really detest about it, and this is why I agree with this guy called Yuval Noah Harari, who wrote a book called Homo Sapiens that I read a few years ago. He's a bit of a sort of a alarmist,
Right.
I'd say. He's very much a kind of AI opponent because he thinks that its effects could be...
Well, he's a safety first sort of thing.
Yeah, but in a way, I don't like the safety first thing because that implies a certain sort of left wing inclination. And
I see. I certainly didn't mean that.
But he's warning about the nasty effects of AI for society and where it could all lead.
And we need him just as we need people to offset the utopians.
Yeah.
We need the dystopians.
But one thing one thing that concerns him is not knowing whether something's AI generated or not. Because
totally.
when it might not be able to write like Martin Amis, but if it can write well enough to be a newspaper column or something and convince someone that it's been written by a human, then it's still something that he wants us to be able to distinguish between, has that been generated with AI or hasn't it been generated
totally.
with AI?
Some kind of watermark.
To me, I don't really want to read novels anymore that are written after 2025, unless it's an author I know. I mean, if it's Julian Barnes and he's come out with his latest book, and I know he's not going to be a guy who's going to rely on generative AI to do it, but if it's an author I'm not familiar with and their first book's published in 2026, you don't really know what's going into that. I don't, it's like it feels like you've been ripped off. Yeah, it's a fraudulent. It's fakery. There's something quite nasty about it. I think you're sort of being conned in a way by this stuff.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, so you mentioned those MIT studies, and I think we should talk about the one that you wrote about in more detail. But the first ones, which are a bit old now, they're not old, but they came out in the last few months. There's two that have come out. One was done, interestingly, by Microsoft and Carnegie Mellon University, and the other one was done by MIT, I think, a few months later, which were very much about the... So this, on the theme of this AI psychosis, people who obviously are having sort of slight mental health problems because of AI, it seems, because they're convincing themselves that it's sentient, which is not a good situation to be in. But even before you reach that step...
Sentient and borderline human.
Yeah. Exactly. Unsurprisingly, it shouldn't really be a surprise, but if you use your chat GPT a lot... What the Carnegie Mellon did and MIT is run a lot of tests on people. They had different groups, like people who were asked to write essays, and some of them didn't have access even to the internet. Some of them were allowed to use search engines. Some of them were allowed to make use of chatbots, and they kind of divided them into groups. And then they kind of, some of it was quite scientific, like hooking up receptors to the brain so they can see what bits are sort of lighting up and all this lot, and then they give them tasks to do afterwards. But the conclusions of the research by both papers was that the people who are becoming quite heavily reliant on chat GPT or its ilk are essentially killing their brains.
How you characterize it, it turns you into a technologically lobotomized ape.
Yeah, it's not surprising if you don't use your brain to 100%. Write an essay. If you don't learn a language, if you don't exercise your mind in the same way, if you don't exercise your body, it's going to go to mush.
I completely agree, and that's one of my more immediate concerns. And I think I've spoken about this in the context of AI on this pod before. If I end up doing like public speaking, where you're really reliant on what's in your head, okay, there's only so many props you can use. Someone like a stand-up comic is a massive example of that. Like someone like Leo Kearse, when I went and saw that comedy, he can just stand up there and just fucking deliver. Or even the actors that I saw in the play that I saw. They're completely exposed. Yeah. They're live on a stage. There's nothing they can fall back on. It's all got to be in their head. They've got to be totally self-reliant. And this is the problem. The more you start relying on something else, it could be as simple as someone like who only ever drives places and never walks somewhere. Yeah. As you say, your body will start to atrophy. And it feels like that. And in fact, I wrote up Google's device launch this week, and I've just got one little sentence that might amuse you. Because obviously Google, in its Pixel devices, is going to go big on AI. In fact, I'll read the paragraph because some of the AI stuff is really useful, just to give it some balance. But the paragraph, as I wrote, as you would expect of Google, it's once more gone big on AI. One product called Magic Q is one of those intrusive personal assistant features that tries to anticipate your every need. I don't like that. No. I don't want my phone going, Scott, isn't it time you had a dump or something?
Well, that's like being a slave, isn't it?
Well, quite.
Really.
But again, that's an atrophying of your autonomy and your ability to just conduct your own affairs independently. And then there's a thing called Voice Translate, which is just a Babel fish, which is brilliant. It live translates phone calls. Fucking hell, that's amazing. No pushback on that. That is a classic example of an AI tool, which is like there's no downside to that. I suppose
except that no
you
one's
don't need to learn other languages. Yeah, but that I'll because I haven't bothered anyway, except for a bit of Spanish.
Yeah, I know. But this is where.
But I still think it's fucking. I understand your point, and sorry, I'll let you finish it. But I still think, as a tool, that's an illustration of a very useful tool.
I agree. But the when we were talking earlier about like basic mechanization and automation making things easier for us, this is why even before AI I had worries about this stuff. They say if you go back to the sort of 19th century and certainly back to ancient times, people were able to recite whole books and they were able to
or poetry or whatever.
And like the repository of knowledge in people's heads was quite big because, and I think this is actually much more recent than that. Even if you go back to the sort of 70s and 80s, people were quite good at sort of recall and memory compared with now. Because you don't have to, because basically all that knowledge that you had in your mind, you used to get to pub quizzes or someone will ask you, we could be sitting in a pub and you'd say to me, So what happened in the French Revolution after the whole Robespierre episode? What would I do these days? Well, I'll look it up on my phone.
Exactly.
Whereas you'd have guys who'd be able to
talking
tell
about
you,
pub quizzes, they have to ban smartphones, don't they?
But you'd have people in the past who could just sit in the pub and how impressive it was that they knew it from their high school days and they remembered it and they retained it. And all that's to do with exercising your mind.
I agree.
And those skills are useful in jobs as well.
100%.
Public speaking.
And how, apart from just the general mental health and intellectual virtue of knowing things and learning stuff, back to that self-reliance thing. What about, assuming these things become ubiquitous and we've all got heads-up display smart glasses on the whole time. What about that one time where you don't have it? Are you then completely naked and exposed? And what an awful situation to be in. Anyway, I'll just quickly finish this paragraph I wrote. And then one other thing was called Gemini Live, and it tells you about stuff that you shine it through a phone's camera. So you put your phone camera on this beer and it'll go, that's a hazy Jane, and if you have too much of it, you'll turn into a fat bastard or something like that. That ship's already sailed.
It's like these health apps, that sort of run your, you take it. You need to take a shit at 8 o'clock every morning and eat an avocado.
Funny how we both make reference to that. It's always scatological at the end of it. And anyway, let me finish. The final thing I said was, and this is what which most coincides with what you were saying. I said, and then there are the usual AI tools designed to spare people the hassle of thinking or knowing things.
Yeah.
And that's obviously meant a bit sarkily, but it's also serious. How can you have an exchange like we're having now unless that information is in our heads? We can't be constantly, even though I've got the laptop in front of me, it's like I'm constantly sort of looking stuff up and referencing and fact-checking and all that sort of thing. You can't have a flowing, dynamic, spontaneous exchange unless the shit's in your head and on the tip of your tongue.
But I worry about it. I worry about this for educationally as well in a big way, because I think I got a 15-year-old midway through his GCSEs. I've got an older son who you've met who's coming out of university fairly soon, and so I'm less worried about him. But even he tells me that he's used ChatGPT and the like
in a bit of a cheaty way.
Yeah, I mean, they probably don't regard it as a cheaty way because he sort of used it to sort of summarise notes and to give him a sense.
Because that can be a fine line, can't it? The fine line between assistance and cheating.
It's a very fine line. Like if you do humanities degrees, like essay writing subjects, or at A level, I remember you used to have to go into your A levels and expect to write a big essay on some question, and you could anticipate what the questions are going to be. But you'd have to sort of come up with that yourself. I imagine what they're doing these days is they're probably going and putting this stuff through one of these tools and getting a kind of, this is how it would answer it, maybe memorising it, going into the exam. You basically just, there's a memory task there involved because you've got to hold it in your mind for an hour and a half.
Well, but that's a different tangent because I think most academia doesn't involve thinking. It just involves
it's not original thinking.
Anyway.
It's not original thinking. It's English literature and history. When you studied them in my day, when you didn't have any technology at all in terms of it wasn't around in the 80s. Obviously, it wouldn't have been your day either.
No, laptops were a big deal 90s. Back when we were lads.
You had to. I remember sitting in class and you were having discussions with the teacher about what does this bit in Thomas Hardy's book mean, and it's like, well, and he's like, oh, I like your analysis of it, but it's your analysis. You're coming up with it.
Rather than
these days they're just looking on the internet. What's accepted wisdom on the internet? So I think word slippery slope.
And also one other thing on that tangent I'll talk about is in terms of social skills. So let's say you could get a bot. I was thinking, you were talking about Rafa. I was trying to imagine Rafa having a tennis bot instead of another equivalently competent human being to hit tennis balls with.
Hitting machines, which he was using the other day.
Yeah, but we've all seen them, but they don't move. Imagine actually having a bot that ran around the back of the court.
They can fire it to different bits of the court, though.
Yeah, they're pretty good, but it's not the same as hitting with a person. No. But you could potentially mimic it. And anyway, it just made me think. There's also just the social aspect, like back to this thing in that BBC story and that lad that got carried away interacting with the AI. With humans. To have a functional relationship with a human, whether it's romantic or friendly or business or whatever, there's a hell of a lot of quite sophisticated social shit that goes on. You've got to be able to get on with each other, but then not be too slimy such that the person thinks you're completely insincere and annoying. You know, and there's just this constant little subtle social cues, and you get to know each other over time. You know, and the relationship that any of the three of us have now will be different to the relationship we had 10 years ago because it evolves over time as well. All these things that are very human that you don't have, the more and more you just think, fuck it. Humans are a bit too awkward. They might say no. They might upset me. They might be busy. This computer never says no. It's never busy. It will tell me what I want to hear. Yeah. So there's that as well.
And the other one of the other downsides to it, and this is kind of getting close to home, really. The career that we were in, but you've already been talking about the Press Gazette stuff.
Yeah.
One of the nasty side effects, I would say, of generative AI, and particularly what Google's done with its Gemini tool, is as with my South Korea query, you know, how many people are there in these? You know, how many countries have 1.5 million people? People do search queries these days. What used to happen is you used to go and click a link that was to do with that query, which would have been written by a person like you or me. Whereas what's happening now
you get about half a page of answer.
You get half a page of Gemini, which is what
it does have hyperlinks, but you normally don't bother to click.
I mean, the information in that Gemini is usually cribbed from the first few hyperlinks that are just below it. But what happens is people read the Gemini summary and they don't click at the hyperlinks. Now, the big problem with that, for anybody who thinks, so what, we shouldn't really care about the guys who do the hyperlinks if it's better, more convenient, it does a good summary. Okay, if you go along with that argument, if there's the people who are doing the hyperlinks eventually have no reason to do the hyperlinks because no one's clicking them anymore and there isn't a commercial reason to do it, then where does the Gemini get its information
it's a
from?
Self-eating snake.
Yeah, does it just start feeding off other AI generated stuff?
And then before you know it, there's no new thinking at all.
Exactly.
Or new writing.
Exactly.
I want to. We've been shitting on AI for a little while, and I want to continue doing it, but we've got to sort of wrap it up.
I think we should
on the
talk about
student side. What do you want?
I just wanted to talk about that other MIT study.
Yeah, well, actually, I'm about to lead up to that.
Brilliant. Okay.
So my stuff has been. I want to shit on it as from a commercial angle.
Yeah,
we've been shitting on it. Yeah, we've been shitting on it from a sort of more.
And this is quite relevant to telecom as well.
Qualitative and moral and sort of human mental health angle.
Yeah.
But what about the commercial side? Because, I mean, if you look at, I don't know the stats off the top of my head, but people talk about the NASDAQ and how much of stock markets are basically being driven by AI. Yeah. Well, NVIDIA is like the biggest company by market cap or something. And that's almost entirely an AI play because NVIDIA's been around for decades as a
gaming stuff.
Yeah, as a graphics card and all that sort of thing. And it had a lot of fails. It tried to get to mobile, it failed. It tried to get in this and that and failed, but it's obviously hit the fucking jackpot here. And I've just been talking a lot about the AI speculative bubble as we spoke about, earlier on in this conversation. And so I first wrote a piece start of August that said OpenAI funding frenzy inflates the AI bubble even further. And this is when there were stories about OpenAI getting like billions of dollars, like just one individual investor just chucked $3 billion at them and fuck it. And it's valuing, the company's valued at about 500 billion now on revenues far short of that. So the profits to earnings ratio, the price to earnings ratio is completely off whack, which is one of the comparisons to the dot-com bubble. Yeah. I don't know how on a quantitative basis how good those comparisons are now, but it's starting to get into that.
How much is Nvidia worth at the moment?
4 trillion or something.
Jesus,
I'll look it up now.
That's ridiculous, isn't it?
I'll look it up in Google Finance.
4.32.
Oh, well, thanks, Pierre.
4.32. So it's, when I looked at it a few weeks ago, it was at the sort of 3 trillion level. Where's that extra trillion come from?
It's just silliness is where it's come
Back
from.
of the couch.
Yeah. And so I wrote about that, and that was just at the start of August. This is the other thing that feels bubbly, is how quickly these things are changing, to your point just now. And so I wrote about it on 4th of August, and then the 18th of August, and that was before GPT-5 had launched. And after GPT-5 launched, a little bit after, I wrote a headline on the 18th. That's only started this week. Fucking hell. My headline was GPT-5 launch punctures the AI hype bubble, if not a speculative one. So I'm making a distinction between a speculative bubble, which is investment, and hype, which is narrative. Yeah. And I'm just saying the hype bubble's been a bit punctured, and I've got a few points of evidence, like a few people. There's a a few headlines, including like the New Yorker had a headline, "What if AI doesn't get much better than this?" Various people asking these, has it peaked, sort of questions. So that's what I was talking about, the hype bubble. There's more and more people daring to say the emperor's not wearing any clothes, sort of thing. And then most recently, as I mentioned earlier, only 2 days later, the middle of this week, tech stocks hit by a bubble fears. So tech stocks went down a bit. Obviously, not that much, judging by Nvidia's market cap, but it did have a little wobble. If you look at it for the week, Pierre,
it's regaining some.
So it's basically
today.
regained it. So, and as I said at the bottom of that bit, I said it's a very minor stock market correction. But apparently, I also noted that even Sam Altman said that maybe AI is in a speculative bubble. If even fucking Sam Altman's saying that, then you've got to take it seriously, haven't you? And within that was this MIT piece, which seemed to be one of the things that catalyzed this slight market correction. And let's not forget, like in the dot-com bubble, there were a few corrections. But again, I'm gonna look it up now. But anyone can look it up. If you just look at NASDAQ or S&P or whatever, and look at it historically, as far back as it will go, like the 80s or whatever, and just look at the ridiculous peak around 2000. But it got more jagged.
Yeah.
So you do get these little corrections, and then you got the final correction, and it all fucking went to shit, and everyone lost all their money by the end of 2001. And so this is probably just one tiny correction. It will keep going up for a bit. And all I'm saying is, and anyone else who warns about bubbles, I'm no Warren Buffett. Anyone else who warns about bubbles is like, look, this is a bubble. The analogy that was used with the dot-com bubble was like musical chairs. And like musical chairs is fine as long as you've got a chair when the music stops. But if you haven't got a chair when the music stops, you're fucked.
Yeah.
And at some stage, the music's going to stop on any speculative bubble. The smart people who have timed it perfectly and got out of the peak are laughing. But a lot of people won't have, because they're going to be greedy and they'll keep thinking it's going to go higher, 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 higher. But at some stage, a massive inflection will occur. Anyway, so this MIT thing. It was called, the report was titled "The Gen AI Divide: State of AI Business in 2025." And there's a subset of MIT that focuses specifically on agentic AI or something like that. And here's a quote from the report.
I think I picked the same quote out. I think it's pretty much the opening sentence of the exec.
Yes. Okay. Well, let's see if it is. So, despite 30 to 40 billion, is it? Yeah. Okay. Despite 30 to 40 billion in enterprise investment into Gen AI, this report uncovers a surprising result that 95% of organisations are getting zero return. And by zero return, they mean P&L, profit and loss impact, i.e., just the bottom line.
Yeah.
And they note that AI tools often enhance individual productivity, but that doesn't necessarily translate to bottom line.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of other quotes I extracted from it that are worth reading out. They said that enterprise-grade AI systems are failing, quote, due to brittle workflows, lack of contextual learning, and misalignment with day-to-day operations. And they elaborate on that by saying, the core barrier to scaling is not infrastructure, regulation, or talent, it's learning. Most Gen AI systems do not retain feedback, adapt to context, or improve over time. And then I wrote, in other words, clever and powerful though they are, LLMs are off-the-peg generic models that lack the, quote, intelligence, unquote, to learn from and optimize themselves to their environment. And I finished by saying, unlike humans.
Yeah, they're not artificially intelligent.
Exactly.
They're just useful tools. Yeah, and I think that's really relevant to the telecom sector, that one, the quote that we both used about zero returns, because you look, this has been around for a couple of years now, this generative AI, and all these press releases that we started off talking about flowing into your inboxes, all the bullshit that you get from the likes of Amdocs and Netcracker and these companies about how AI is going to revolutionize your business, has made not a jot of difference to telcos' fortunes at all. They're, I mean, you look at the sales situation, it's exactly what it was. There's no growth story attached with AI. The only upside I would say for the AI sector, for the telecom sector with AI, is companies that are selling to data centers connectivity products. So
like Nokia, Infinera, and all that.
So Nokia, Infinera, Cisco, Juniper. Yeah, these guys, because of the large language model training and what that does in terms of traffic in that data center area, both inside them and between them.
Yeah.
The companies that provide products for that area like the ones we just mentioned, are in a good position. And then there's this hope that companies like Ericsson have that maybe in the future this will sort of filter down to the actual access network as well. But
there's very little evidence that it's going to increase wireless data traffic.
There's very little evidence. There's very little evidence that's going to happen. Nobody that I speak to, none of the analysts who seem to know what they're talking about think that's going to happen, frankly. So I think Ericsson's actually
I like the way you qualify analysts who seem to know what they're talking about, implying there's a tranche of them that don't.
Yeah, I mean, the guys that have been in the industry for a long time. And number two, if that does happen, I don't see how that's a good thing for the telcos. Because it might be a good thing for Ericsson. It might be, let's go and buy loads more 5G equipment because we need all this capacity in our networks to support all this traffic that's being generated by these new AI applications. But we've seen time and time again that the telcos don't make extra money from extra traffic on the network. They don't have a business model that supports it. So,
well, indeed.
So
all it does is it costs them more. All it does OpEx.
Is probably cost them more in OpEx or CapEx for investment. So it squeezes the margins even more. So I don't see how that's a good thing for them. And then if we're going to go along with the argument that, I don't like this argument, the idea that you can take staff out of the workforce because you can rely on AI to do it. But there's been a lot of misreporting about that, frankly.
Right.
Really, people like Alison Kirkby, you get your newspapers like the FT coming out with these stories about how AI is going to lead to this many job losses by 2030. It's like an FT headline that they've written, and it's total bullshit. The reason that BT is thinking it can cut 55,000 jobs by 2030, and it's got like 130,000 at the moment, including contractors. That's the upper target that they've set, is because they won't be building fibre anymore in 2030, and all these guys who are involved in the fibre job won't be required. That's the main reason. The link to AI is actually very limited. And if you look at in contrast to what's happening on the vendor side, that chart that's in that story is showing, the hyperscalers and the likes of Ericsson. What I've been doing for a lot longer than that is looking at telcos, 20 big tier one telcos in the workforce, people that are headquartered in Europe and North America, and how staff's been evolving over the years. And it's been going down, frankly, since 2014, 2015. Nothing to do with AI, really. That decline that's happened in the telco workforce is all to do with the fact that they've not been in a great position. It's divestiture, it's ordinary efficiency measures.
It's normal adjustments.
It's normal adjustments, and unfortunately,
realities.
It's always adjusting down because the industry they've outsourced more. They've grown more reliant on some of the vendors that are in that table for certain things. To get to the point where there is a tech link, they've done more in the automation area. Yeah. There is an argument there that they've been able to sort of run network operations centres with fewer staff because of some of the tools that they've had available. But to call it AI, and I like the sentence you used when you used that quote from the MIT study, it's not AI. Come on. It's data analytics, machine learning at best.
Quite. And one thing, if it's all right with you, I'll start to wrap up the AI segment and move on to other stuff.
Yeah.
Might be a good opportunity for a break as well. Is the biggest thing I took from that MIT study, and other people have taken it from it. I noticed Richard Windsor, who we often shout out, made a similar comment. Is they're basically saying that companies aren't doing it right.
Who's saying they aren't doing it right?
MIT, that study.
Not doing AI right.
Yeah, they're not implementing it right. What they're doing, and this is a massive paraphrase, and I could be misrepresenting it, but this is what I took from it. What they're doing is they're buying some AI, chucking it at their workforce, and going, right, fucking use this.
Yeah. And
then expecting good shit to come from it. Whereas what you actually have to do is because AI is an off-the-shelf thing, because GPT or Grok or whatever, or Gemini is an off-the-shelf generic LLM, you have to get it and then you have to retrain it for the specific needs of your company, your environment. There was a story today to do with AI. Ericsson and a bunch of other Swedish companies have launched an AI company. I think Paul covered it in your Eurobytes.
Well,
one of the reasons they'll be doing it is because
Let's get spherical.
Yeah. Yeah, let's get started. He's on good form, Paul, with the headline writing at the moment. What should we find out the one he said?
The other one that he, which is a story written by my colleague Teresa.
Yeah,
but the headline was actually Paul. To give full credit to Paul,
yeah,
and it was.
Does he always fuck around with the headlines? I know he's a copy editor.
Anyway, I'd encourage him to.
Oh, I see. Right.
But he came up with so Vodafone's come out with some sort of technology that allows you to block pornography and this kind of stuff.
Yes, especially for kids.
Yeah. And the headline was "No nudes is good news for parents,"
which is a fucking brilliant headline.
Show me the money.
Yeah, show me the money. Well, Paul's got proper old school punning skills in his headlines.
Shout out to Ken Whelan as well for Rara Rakuten, owner of the Open RAN.
Yeah, that's very good. Ken's good at that stuff.
That's a good one. But I quite liked even his "Let's Get Spherical" says Ericsson's AI supergroup. So he's sort of mixing an image of ABBA with, was it Olivia Newton-John that did that aerobics song back in the 80s? Anyway, so what I took from that thing is, so companies are just being, and I think this kind of goes full circle with what you were saying about how AI encourages us to suspend our higher thinking and rely too heavily on machines to do the mental heavy lifting for us. I think companies are doing that. They're thinking they can just get hold of some AI, whack it out there. You know, even our company's done that. I won't go into specifics in case I get in trouble. But they sort of inflict this LLM on their workforce and expect that by itself, without any fine tuning, without any training, without any specializing of the model to their specific needs, not just language like the Swedes seem to be doing with this story that great headline came from, but also to the specifics of the industry you're in, specifics of your own workflow, your own priorities, all that sort of thing. You know,
well, the telcos
really
say that they are doing that, don't they? We go to these press conferences with people like Scott Petty at Vodafone, they say they do a lot of fine tuning. They're not building models from scratch.
MIT begs the difference.
They claim to be doing. Yeah, I mean, I have to be honest, I haven't read that MIT study in depth. Big. And so I don't know what they said about individual sectors, and maybe there's some more positive points.
They were definitely saying that one of the reasons the implementation is so bad, one of the reasons that 95% of organisations are getting zero return is because they're not, they're just not doing a good enough job of implementing it.
I push back slightly, and I suspect that even if they were trying to train it and make it more relevant to their business, I suspect that they still wouldn't be seeing a great return on it. They might be better than zero, which I think was its opening sentence.
Well, their point was 95% of companies are getting zero.
Are getting zero. So maybe the figure's slightly.
So maybe it'd be 80%.
Maybe it'd be 80%.
Or whatever.
But I still think that these technologies are. And in terms of what you can get out of them, certainly from a sales perspective, it's. I'm talking specifically about telecom here. I don't see that telco can really make anything out of generative AI. I don't see how that is I don't see how there's a story for them there. Okay, maybe they can use it. Maybe they can use these AI technologies to figure out when customers are going to get pissed off and go, I'm about to leave EE, and then you can do some more targeted marketing to try and retain them and reduce churn. That's the only revenue impact. In terms of costs, I mean, the big one is like we don't need to rely on staff anymore because we can use chatbots. Instead, well, I'm afraid what that's going to lead to is customers getting extremely pissed off for all the reasons we've just gone over in the last 40 minutes, or whatever it was, to do with how crap these systems are. When you ask them things like how many,
and there was some other research that I think I wrote about. This is ringing a bell in my head, where it basically was that there was some data. Maybe we didn't write it out. Maybe it's something I was thinking of covering and never did. But there's some data about customer dissatisfaction. That's it. I think someone else on my team wrote it up. There's some data about customer dissatisfaction about dealing with bots rather than people. So that's a thing.
People don't like, one thing that these companies should have learned by now, after the last 30 years of like phoning up and having like machines talking to you and like press this button for this and press this button for that. People don't like talking to machines. No. And I don't care what surveys you've done.
You feel dissed, don't you? You feel taken for granted.
Telenor came out with this thing a couple of years ago. Maybe it was even more recent. It's probably more recent than that. I think it was Telenor saying like it turns out people actually like dealing with chatbots in preference to dealing with customer service agents. There's a short-term thing I can see, like a short-term novelty factor that, if I can just like raise a query on a website and it's a simple thing to address and I can get a quick answer, That's great. And then I don't have to go through the hassle of explaining it to somebody. And when it's a real problem,
Yeah.
you know, when like, oh, my son's in the US, he's got an eSIM, but what he wants to do, he doesn't really live in the UK anymore, so he wants to go onto a prepaid plan while
It's nuanced.
when it's nuanced,
Yeah.
nobody wants to talk to a bloody machine.
No. Let me wrap it up. I'm gonna cede the floor to Richard Windsor, who we still haven't met. I really want to get him on the pod. John apparently knows him. I'll go to
I've
John.
spoken to him on the phone, but
Right.
it's been many years since I have.
Well, he's based in Middle East, I think, so it's fair enough. But I'm always saying if he's over here, it'd be great to have him on. Anyway, he gets enough fucking free publicity of us. Least he could do is turn up on the pod. He goes, when he was writing about this thing that we were just talking about based on that MIT research, he goes, this makes sense as RFM research, i.e. his own research thing, has long concluded the best use of an LLM in an enterprise is to use it to index and cross-reference all of the unstructured data the company has. This requires the enterprise to implement the LLM properly and to fine-tune it on all its corporate data, which is not what's happening in most cases. Most companies give their employees a generic chat prompt and expect them to triple their productivity overnight, leading to the mismatch between expectations and reality.
That sounds very familiar with something else I've heard, but
There
I'm
we
not
go.
going to bring it up. But interesting the way he's described it, because the way he's described it is as a data analytics tool,
There we go. Yeah, and dealing with unstructured
not
data.
AI.
Totally. Okay, let's wrap up there. We'll have a little visit and then we'll do the long tail when we get back. Okay, and we're back in the room. Right, as usual, we banged on far too long in the opening segment, so we have to make these next two relatively short and sweet.
Mm-hmm.
The piece I wrote this very morning. So there's a bit of a segue here. We've been banging on about AI, and we're banging on about how hyped up it is. And this AI hype has really major geopolitical connotations because America's decided that it's got to beat China at AI, otherwise we're all fucked, basically. And
Speaking Mandarin, otherwise.
we'll be speaking Mandarin and
Eating Peking duck,
and
whatever
just,
that is.
you know, I mean, more broadly, countries need enemies. It goes back to like Orwell and like we've always been at war with East Asia and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Politicians need enemies.
Probably goes back to Thucydides or something.
Yeah, Thucydides' trap.
Yeah.
Politicians, powerful people need enemies because that's how it keeps the rest of us in check. When we go, hold on a sec, why are you taxing us so much? Why are you restricting our civil liberties? Why are you just being a fucking twat? They just go, well, I'm doing it to protect you from the baddies.
Yeah.
So you need baddies. And China getting too good at AI is definitely a major baddie for the Americans right now. And as we touched on a little bit before, and certainly having many other pods in the past, one company that's ended up as the focal point of that is NVIDIA, because they make the GPUs that it turns out are really fucking handy for getting better at AI.
It's lucky for them, wasn't it?
It was lucky for them. And any shareholders, and I'm not an NVIDIA shareholder, so I obviously begrudge them their sudden unearned riches. Can you imagine someone like, I know people back from when I used to write about it from a graphics card point of view who are still there. They've been there
Do you know what intrigues
20
me?
years, and their stock options now, I mean, they just must be burning money for a laugh.
I'm intrigued about before NVIDIA went off on this, which is very recent, obviously. It's sort of ChatGPT's arrival, kind of how much Jensen Huang talked about AI, if at all.
I think he's always been quite visionary.
Right.
He's always been very disruptive, but his focus back when I used to cover them 20 years ago was more having a pop at Intel. And God, how those have changed. At that
Well,
time,
he still
Intel...
does that now in a more kind of discreet way.
But at that time, Intel was a much bigger company than Nvidia.
Oh,
now
yeah.
Nvidia could buy Intel with the money he finds down
Yeah.
the back of the motherfucking sofa.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was back then. I think he was. I mean, he tried to get into mobile
Yeah.
with a chip called Tegra, if I remember rightly.
Into mobile phones, you mean?
Yeah, like the chip side of mobiles.
Right.
And he's tried to get into standalone gaming. I think he's the kind of guy. He's very restless. He's very innovative.
Yeah.
All that sort of thing.
Does a lot of push-ups every morning, apparently.
Well, yeah. I mean, one of these kind of people. They're different. They're a different kind of
Does
person.
about 100 push-ups every morning. He's a bit like Robert De Niro in Taxi Driver, except he doesn't go around saying who you looking at or whatever.
If I do 20, I have to go and have a sit down for about 2 hours.
I don't know how many I can do at the moment. I'm so weak.
Yes, but you know these are very alpha, very overperforming, very outlier types of people. People like him, Musk, Bezos, whoever.
Yeah.
You know, these are exceptional people. You don't even need to like them to know that they're exceptional. So he's probably been thinking about it for a while. He will have had his eye on the power of parallel processing versus sequential processing, and where that's useful and where it isn't. I mean, that's why you have a graphics card. That's why you don't rely on the CPU to do everything.
Yeah.
Because graphics cards are much better at things like rendering video and all that sort of thing. And it turns out they're much better at training LLMs than a sequential processing thing like a CPU. So he's probably been on it for a while. I don't begrudge him it, but it still feels a bit bubbly. But then we've just covered that, so I won't go back into that. But we've got this thing going on with the States where they know that access to these NVIDIA chips is a major bottleneck for AI progress. And so they're able to influence this one company, NVIDIA, and through that very significantly inhibit China's capacity for progressing with AI, which they seem to consider as an existential thing. Again, for the reasons we've just banged on about for the last hour or so, we're a bit skeptical about that, but that's what the American politicians think, so whatever.
Yeah.
And they got this...
Well, they're not worried about it now that they can get some money from it.
Yes, so we chat about that on the last pod, I think, which just points to how fucking incoherent all this policy is. But one thing I will say about it being incoherent, it always gives me something to write about. So yeah, careful what you wish for.
Oh, incoherence is the best thing to write about.
Exactly, because it's always changing.
Contradictory stuff.
It's always changing. I mean, basically what we do as journalists is we write about change, don't we?
Yeah.
And anyway, I thought this was quite funny. I even did a bit of digging down. I realised I was slightly treading on thin ice because I was starting to generalise about Chinese cultural things, about which I know fuck all. I've been to China once in my life, and I've often said on this podcast, if I go back to China, it'll be some trepidation.
I think that was... I didn't
in case
really
I end
know
up
you
in room 101.
When we were both there. I didn't really know you that well.
Right, or maybe very early on in us knowing each other.
More or less when we'd just been taken over by Informer.
There we go.
Like
so it'd been 2015, wouldn't it?
It was at that Huawei event in that
in
place
Wuzhen, which was an amazing place.
Looks like a sort of Chinese Venice.
It's all pagodas, and you feel like you've gone back like 2,000 years in time.
Yeah.
And that was an amazing trip, and that's the only time I've been there. Is that the only time you've been to China?
I've been a few times.
You've been to Shenzhen and all that sort of thing?
I've been to Shenzhen with ZTE.
Right.
And I've been to Hong Kong quite a lot. I worked there.
I have been to Hong Kong.
Yeah.
I mean, China wouldn't like me say it. I don't really think of Hong Kong as China.
No, I know what you mean.
Just like I don't think of Taiwan as China. But another reason why if I go to China now, I'll end up in fucking room 101.
And I've been to
saying all the wrong things.
Been to Shanghai with ZTE.
Right. Okay. I've never been on a ZTE trip.
Well, this is
back in the day.
This is 2005, 6 or something. It's a long time ago. Yeah. I worked in Hong Kong for about 2 months for a while.
Cool.
When I was an analyst. Yeah.
I remember, I might have said this on the pod, when I went to Hong Kong, it was on a Qualcomm trip, and Sean Carr, who's one of the people who runs Telecom TV, was there, and he was a veteran of Hong Kong, and he knew about this place called the Foreign Correspondence Club or something like that, and we went and hung out there. And you just got a sense of that. The mere fact that it's got a place called a Foreign, you just got a sense of that sort of colonial stuff, which I know is a bit of a swear word, but, that is Hong Kong's history, whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
Anyway... what was I saying? Oh yeah, China. And
you sounded a bit like Michael Parkinson then.
It's just me trying to marshal my thoughts. I'm trying to retract from the tangent.
No, I like it. I think you should do your Michael Parkinson impersonation more often.
I spoke about the concept of face and face saving.
Yeah.
And I, to cover my arse, I got lots of hyperlinks to like third parties who claim to know about it. But basically, my very limited understanding is like in China and East Asian culture, saving face, not being embarrassed, not being publicly humiliated, having people be at least superficially respectful to you is a fucking big deal.
Yeah.
And they hate losing face. And the reason I brought it up is because about a month or so ago, the US Commerce Secretary is called Howard Lutnick. And so I opened my paragraph going on about face and all that, and then I go, Lutnick didn't seem to have gotten a memo. And he did an interview with CNBC, and I'll just quote him. And this is in reference to this GPU that NVIDIA's got called the H20, which is, as the number implies, a lot shit than the H100. So if you're like, if you're N scale, you're maybe buying Nokia NVIDIA H100s right now.
Yeah.
Whereas the H20 is a compromise that NVIDIA made with the US government of like, you can sell them something, but it's got to be shit. So they went, all right, what about this? And judging by the numbers,
So
it's
the
a fifth as good.
H20, the 15% deal, you sell.
Yeah, that's for the H20s.
That's only for the H20s. So the H100s, they're still not allowed.
They still can't have. No, China officially can't ever have H100s.
Yeah.
They probably find ways.
So they can sell. They can basically, the arrangement is you can sell chips that aren't particularly good, and we're going to get a load of money from it as well. Yeah.
And then on top of that, Lutnick said this to CNBC. He goes, in reference to the H20, he goes, this is like the fourth one down. So the fourth one down, we want to keep China using it. We want to keep having the Chinese use the American technology stack because they still rely on it, and that's key. So we try to play that balance. We don't sell them our best stuff, not our second best stuff, not even our third best. I think our fourth best is where we have come out and that we're cool.
I mean, that's appalling. That
Lutnick said all of these
we want
things.
to keep China addicted to something that's not particularly
but a shit
good.
version of it. And so lo and behold, the Chinese got their feathers ruffled a little bit
I'm not
about this.
surprising.
That's why I talked about face saving at the start. And so they've just gone, and obviously America's been provoking China in a lot of ways through other little trade and sanctions and tariffs and all that sort of thing. But this seems to have been the straw that broke the camel's back. Now they're like, right, you were just taking a piss, mate. And so the FT wrote a story yesterday where the headline was, China turns against NVIDIA's AI chip after, quote, insulting, close quote, Howard Lutnick remarks. And
Why did he
those
feel
remarks.
it's funny that these guys feel the need to intervene with these inflammatory remarks and just upset something that, previously.
Well, do you know what my feeling is? And that's why I spent a bit of time this morning researching the whole face thing. American politicians, they don't worry about faith. I know Trump superficially likes people to come in and suck up to him and all that sort of thing. But American politicians are used to just being shat on by the media from all different directions all the time. So the concept of face saving for them, and they've got no pride. They've completely surrendered themselves to the.
Well, he's I know most of them, but Trump's incredibly thin-skinned.
He is, but he still has to have a lot of incoming shit. I mean, he's thin-skinned, but
He doesn't
actually
react to the
thick-skinned.
incoming shit well, though, does he? He bans journalists from his.
No,
press
I know. He reacts
conferences.
badly and petulantly.
He doesn't like South Park and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like.
But I still think I still think culturally Americans are used to more incoming disrespectful shit
Yeah, totally.
than their Chinese equivalents are. And so according to this FT story, they've just gone, yeah, fuck this. And quote from their story, as a result, Chinese tech groups held off or significantly downsized. So what they've done is that it's much more discreet and it's much more behind the scenes in China. But, Xi Jinping or whatever, or someone senior will have had a word with the regulators and gone, regulators, why don't you lean on the companies? And, it's all much more subtle, but it's still the same mafia stuff, i.e. do what you're told or something bad's going to happen to you.
Yeah.
But it's just a little bit more subtle and behind the scenes and whispered, I think. Whereas in America, as is their way, to culturally generalise again, it's all a bit more overt and shouty, isn't it?
Yeah, totally.
And yeah, so now apparently NVIDIA's just not making H20s. It's like, well, what's the fucking point?
Yeah.
Not only is our own government giving us a hard time. This is by the way, a report from a site called The Information, which is paywalled, but that's the primary source for this assertion about them not making any more H20s. And Jensen Huang.
So what they're selling is not only shit, but it won't even be around for much longer.
Yeah, because now China's like, well, if Lutnick's going to take the piss, then we won't even buy them.
Right.
It's basically what they're saying.
Right. So the H20s are only really being made for China.
Oh yeah, no, uniquely.
Right.
That's the only reason they exist. They're unique defunctioning of the H100,
right?
So that it could fall below the threshold of what the US government finds acceptable to sell into China.
Right.
And even that.
I mean, imagine a few years ago they'd have been worried about selling H20s even, but
yeah,
as things have improved.
And and again, I linked to Richard Windsor again. He wrote about that this morning. He reckons it's not such a big hit for NVIDIA because they'll make it up elsewhere. And I'll lead up to that because that's the sort of latter part of the narrative of my story.
Do you know what I find interesting about
go on.
NVIDIA? I mean, this is not on the geopolitics thing, but he's a bit of a downer, old Jensen Huang, on the whole Moore's law thing. doubling transistors
every 18 months or whatever.
every 18 months, and he's always having a go at that concept. And this is one of the reasons he says Intel and CPUs, the story's kind of over now. And I've never really quite been able to square that with because NVIDIA's obviously making chips, and it's a different system, and it's a different
and they keep going down manufacturing
and they're
nodes.
going down manufacturing nodes, and but why does Moore's law not apply in NVIDIA's case?
Maybe he fears it's a distraction from other ways in which processing capability improves.
But if anybody's listening in on the podcast and has some real insight into that, it'd be nice to sort of hear it, because it's a question I probably should have asked someone like Ronnie Vasishta last time I met him a few weeks ago. He's the telecom guy at NVIDIA, and I didn't, because there was other things to ask, and that seemed a bit sort of tangential. But
I had someone who's, I think, head of influencers or something in NVIDIA going, "We'd like to get someone on your pod." And then you just reminded me, I haven't heard from them. I went, yeah, fucking bring it on.
Ronnie Vasishta would be the ideal person, because he's head of the whole telecom shebang. And
then it's all gone quiet.
All right.
I should chase them up.
Yes.
In fact, on that note, by the way, people who know better, one thing I meant to mention and briefly forgot, were you about to say something, by the way? On the AI stuff, we were talking about AGI at the start and all that sort of thing. Lots of people who know more about it than I do, which is a fucking large constituency of people, say that the current route, i.e. these LLMs and this throwing compute power, can never, ever get you to AGI. I.e. they've got to have a different fork in the whole fundamental approach.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's another thing. I'd love to chat to someone who knows more about it than I do.
And that's what the guy in Scale was saying. He just didn't see how you got to that by just
from where we are now. You can't just do more of now.
You said that you used the expression, I think I put it in my story as well, like the law of diminishing returns. You just keep doing more of the same thing, and the benefits become smaller and smaller.
But if we've got a curve that's leveling off like the top of an S curve, AGI is well above the top of that leveling off.
It's arguably something that we can never get to.
Well, it's certainly not the current way.
The human brain.
It could be that we rely on things like
neuroscientists who've been studying the human brain for decades don't understand the human brain still properly, and that's what they're trying to do.
No, well, totally. I don't understand my own fucking brain.
There's a mismatch there.
What's going on in my head, mate? I've got Scooby.
Well, that's even worse, trying to understand your brain. But the average brain.
So, to finish off my little story this morning, where am I on it? No, that's that story. So that's it. So China's just like, fuck it. And my point, my headline was, offended China seeks to accelerate decoupling from the US. And so things like Lutnick winding him up. And I went on later on in my story to speculate maybe he wasn't just being clumsy, maybe he did it on purpose. Maybe he wanted to wind them up and make them, because... And this is again where I'll link back to Richard Windsor and Radio Free Mobile.
McDonald's and saying, we're not going to serve you a quarter pounder with cheese. We're not even going to serve you a cheeseburger.
We'll just serve you.
We're not even going to serve you a hamburger. We're going to serve you some like muffin that we've wiped on our arse, and you can do what you want with it.
I was going to be slightly less disgusting and say, we'll serve you our like entry level hamburger and we'll gob in it. But you had to go a level further, didn't you? Anyway, 2 points about that. One, fair enough, I can see why China feels provoked, but lots of people, including Richard Windsor, go, well, that's self-defeating because of all the stuff we've spoken about loads of times of like going down the process nodes and extreme ultraviolet and whether or not China's ever going to have the capacity to go below 7 nanometers. And even 7 nanometers is done in a quite an uneconomic way with this multi-patterning.
Yeah.
The point is, it's all very well having them having a little strop and going, fuck it, we won't buy any even H20s. But what is their alternative, and what is their prospect of having an alternative? The nightmare geostrategically for America is that they somehow get their shit together domestically and they're able to go down the process nodes and they're able to make chips that are as good as NVIDIA chips. But lots of people, including Richard Windsor and the piece I linked to, think they just can't see any prospect for that at all.
Yeah.
So it's all very well them having a strop, but if for them the AI race is as important as it seems to be for America, they're kind of in a bind, China, and America knows it. And one last thing I'll say before I pause for breath is the irony of it, and I've commented on this before, is the main thing against Huawei was always that it's in hock to the Chinese government, yeah?
Yeah.
And now basically...
Like criticism.
Yeah, and the reason to sanction them and ban them and all that sort of thing. And now basically America's whole geopolitical policy seems to be to tell its own companies what to do.
Right.
I.e. not selling to China. So they're both guilty of it. And, you know, I mentioned it before, I think last week, where it was, it was a philosopher who basically said, Carl Jung, who said, you know, you turn into what you hate the most or something like that. I'm paraphrasing. I haven't got the quote up in front of me.
Wasn't he one of Sigmund Freud's, like, sort of... like, contemporaries?
But he basically said, you know, and other people have said that, you know, you turn into what you hate. In other words, what basically is the if you can't beat them, join them. Sort of school of thought, whereas like China's beating on this, so maybe we'll out-China China. And that's what America seems to be doing. They're trying to out-China China by appropriating their own private sector. And let's not forget, this is one definition of fascism, is this conjoining of the government and the private sector.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to go there, and people call Trump fascist because they're hysterical and they can't think of a better pejorative. But, you know, America seems to be more and more trying to appropriate. It wants to own a piece of Intel. There's some stories that it wants to own a piece of TSMC, or anyone that gets subsidy off the government. It wants equity in return. I mean, there is a lot of this going on where America is becoming more like China.
Well, I think Trump's just running it like he's running a business. He seems to have forgotten the fact that he's a president of a democracy, and he seems to think he's just running a big company.
Maybe, and he's very transactional. But my broader point, and I'll finish there unless you've got any last thoughts and cede the ground to the last segment.
How long have we got for that? 2 minutes?
10, 15 minutes, something like that. What? Oh,
not even that.
No.
10 minutes.
Well, I can do a quick one on it. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, that's the thing, really. I think when you get these big powers fighting each other, they end up getting more statist, they end up getting more authoritarian, they end up getting more assertive.
Yeah.
Because the ends justify the means, and the ends are winning, whatever winning looks like.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's that. I'll shut up there. In fact, I even said that. Having said I'll shut up, I'm going to read my last paragraph. I said, what does seem clear is that the US is prepared to do almost anything to maintain its AI supremacy for whatever that's worth. And then I link back to the thing about the speculative bubble bursting. Anyway, I'll shut up now. Last thing, Ian, you wrote a piece. We're not going to be able to do it justice because it's a long piece.
Yeah.
But you wrote a piece headlined, Nokia CEO feels shareholder heat just months into job, which apparently is the most read story on light reading this week. So tell us briefly about that.
Yeah, I mean, the basic mechanics and the moving parts probably won't be any surprise to you because the earnings are out recently and you covered that as well. Yeah. You know, and you know the story of the upsets they've had in mobile, which is a big part of this. But it's quite noticeable that they've he's not had a few months that he would have wanted. Let's say Justin Hotard. Right. Their share price.
He's not had a long honeymoon.
Yeah, and if you look at what's happened to their share price since he took over, it was down when I wrote that story. So unless there's been some rapid recovery in the last couple of days,
I love butchers.
It had basically fallen about 27% since he started in April.
Yeah, that's awkward for a CEO.
Yeah. Now, if you look at it over a longer period of time, I think Ericsson, like over a sort of 5-year period, I think Ericsson's down even more. But like that Nokia decline since he took over has been particularly steep. Mm-hmm. And I've had a couple of shareholders actually getting in touch with me, Nokia shareholders, and sort of expressing their
having a bit of a moan.
Both people with anonymous email addresses obviously don't want to be known.
Actually, I've got a question because it's the first time you told me this. Well, you alluded to it earlier. It's an interesting dilemma, isn't it, for us journalists? When you get people who get in touch who've obviously got an agenda, i.e. they're Nokia shareholders, but that doesn't mean that the information they give you is not good.
No, exactly. So what I did was, the guy whose information I relied on quite heavily, and he posted it himself on Reddit and also sent a letter to Nokia with the same kind of article in it. I checked all of his stuff, all the information he was coming out with, I mean, I've often thought this a long time myself, actually. If you've ever reported on Nokia earnings, as you have, and if anybody else has ever done this, they have two sets of earnings. They have their comparable figures.
Oh yeah, adjusted for adjustments. And all
Yeah.
that, yeah.
Now they have their IFRS, which are the kind of accounting standards way of doing it.
Yeah.
And all right, all companies have their adjusted for adjustments figures, and they all try and sort of massage them a little bit and take out certain things to make it look better. But this guy's very valid point was that if you look at Nokia over the sort of multiple years, like go back to sort of 2016, 2017, around about the time when the Alcatel-Lucent takeover happened, and tot up what they've made in operating profit over that period of time, the delta between the comparable numbers, now we'll get onto what comparable is in a minute,
sure,
and the IFRS numbers is about 10 billion. So your comparable operating profits that they've reported over that period of time, like since 2017, I looked at, I did it myself, I did the calculations myself.
Yeah.
There's a little graphic in there that you'll see. There's only 1 year when the IFRS figures are actually better, quite substantially.
So just people know, if they read the thing, the first thing they'll get is a screenshot from Google Finance, which shows that about in the last month, the share price has dropped off a fair bit.
Although it's ticked up a little bit in the last week or so, perhaps.
And then I'm going to find your diagram.
It's right at the bottom of that story. But if you look at what they've made in comparable operating profits since 2017, it comes to something like, the figures are in the story, but I can't remember off my top of my head, but it's something like 14 billion euros. If you look at what they've made on an IFRS basis, it's something like 3 billion euros.
Right.
And so this guy's like, he's, writing to me, he's like, his point and what he's put in his letter is that it's massaging the figures to make it look better than it is. It's
so some accounting fuckery going on.
Yeah, and I went into the annual reports, and their explanation of what comparable is basically not what you would. I mean, it's kind of what you'd expect, but it's pretty bad. It's like there's all sorts of amortization charges.
Yeah, well, comparable I always assume is like for like, taking aside like M&A and one-offs and standalone shit. So the way they describe it, and I think I included the description, is impairments, like there's a bit that's like other charges, which they don't even explain. So you can write a bunch of shit off.
I mean, it's not even explained properly in the annual report what those charges are, but it's a huge amount. And here's the other interesting thing is that they also admit that C-level compensation and executive rewards, bonus payments are not based on IFRS, they're based on comparable. Which essentially means they're rewarding people based on, if you're going to be cynical or skeptical even, you could say they're rewarding their bosses based on
massage numbers. And looking at your chart, sorry to butt in, so one of the big differences, you had 1 year, like 2022, where the IFRS was much higher. But you got some years where the IFRS is down the toilet, but comparable is still all right.
I mean, the problem with it is that even on a comparable basis, they're not actually very profitable at the moment. And this gets to the stuff that's much higher up in that story. Right. Which is more about the actual, how the business is working at the moment and where they're going to get money from in the future. I mean, we all know that the mobile business is in not a great state. And I've said this repeatedly on the pod, and I stick to it. And I think most people would back me up. And I think even this guy.
Would you even say it to Tommy Wheato's face?
Yeah, well, he'd like me to say this, because what I would say is that I think they're in a much better position technologically now than they were 5 years ago.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, there have been some market developments that have gone against them. Mainly what's happened in North America, which has been the loss of two very big contracts with two very big operators in a market where you make most of your profits. And if you look at what's happened to Nokia's operating profit on the mobile side over that period, I think in 2022 rather, when the kind of 5G was at its hype, coming out of the pandemic, everybody's spending, they'd sorted out all their product problems, everything's looking a bit better. That first half, so the first half of 2022, they made about 450 million in operating profit at their mobile networks business. First half of this year, $75 million loss.
Wow. And you're saying a lot of that is down to
75 million euro loss.
Less yank
Well,
large nets?
I don't know, because they don't say where they make their profits. But the speculation has to be, given what's happened on the sales side. The sales, by the way, mobile networks, 2020, 10.7 billion was responsible for about half their sales. If you look at the last year, 2024, I think it's something like it's less than 8 billion. 40% of the whole amount. It's been a massive drop off in sales, losing those North American contracts, and it's obviously hurt profits more.
Yeah.
And the problem at the moment is, you'd think the big story that Nokia's been coming out with, and you said this, Hotard's come in, he's going to make it more about AI and data center. That's where his real interest lies. So I didn't listen to the earnings call when they last did it, because I get on a call with him in the morning with a bunch of other reporters, and I tend to write my thing up pretty quickly. Whereas they did their earnings call way in the afternoon because of the US audience. But
you get up really early for the thing there.
But I did go over the transcript when I was writing this piece here. I got a copy of the transcript and went over it. And one thing that analysts are really concerned about at the moment is this big story about all the growth's going to come from data center and AI. Well, it isn't. Where is all that growth? Where is all that promised growth that they were saying is going to come from data center and AI? All the interconnect, all that stuff. What's the big driver of their network, what they call their network infrastructure business at the moment?
You tell me.
It's fixed broadband. It's people like AT&T.
Oh, just like domestic.
It's access network. It's fixed access.
Yeah.
It's full fiber networks for AT&T and Verizon,
regular vanilla fiber,
and T-Mobile and those guys. And there's loads of that going on in the US at the moment. Like
much more than the data to data center sort of.
The data center growth year over year so it's 25%, I think, is the figure for fixed broadband. The data center growth. So you've got two other bits, both of which are kind of related to data center, although they're actually a part of telco networks as well. Optical and internet protocol. I think optical...
I always find those boundaries a bit confusing.
Yeah, well, optical was up about 6% year over year. And I think I don't know what internet protocol was, but they're not... For someone pitching this as like, this is a massive boom, like NVIDIA's building all these GPUs, we need data center connectivity, to then turn around, and then you've just bought Infinera, and you're selling that on the basis that there's going to be loads of investment in data center products that are related to that, to then turn up with it in your first full quarter in charge and to show. By the way, I'm not blaming Hotar for this. He's only been there for 3 months, but to have a story that it's 6% year over year growth, it's not that impressive.
So I'm accelerating it, but just because we're running out of time partly as well.
Yeah.
What is the major bitch that these people who are giving you these unsolicited emails moaning about it? What do they think he's doing wrong, or what are they moaning about?
So one of the things is about corporate governance. So what they want is, I mean, the people who are writing to me, I know, are not Americans, they're Finns, but they perceive the Finnish corporate governance setup and the way that board members get elected and the way you vote people off and the way you approve them is all done in a very kind of one guy described it as like a North Korean system.
Right,
almost.
it's too closed.
It's too closed. It doesn't allow for what they want is something
other shareholders to contribute.
You know, there's been talk about them spinning off the mobile networks unit and selling it. Totally wrong. What some shareholders want is the network infrastructure side, the bit that could be this fast growing thing. That's the bit they want spun off. Like,
why?
Detach that from the sluggish, slow growing, it's in a crap state, why would anybody be interested in it, mobile network stuff, which is, by the way, not specific to Nokia. That's just the state of the market. I'm not saying that's
why I was laughing. I was laughing because you're talking about our day job.
The RAN is not our day job, but we talk about it a lot. But that's in a funk, and it probably will be in a funk for years.
Sadly, no, I'm not saying you're wrong.
Take out the the network infrastructure unit, as a separate entity. Headquarter it in the US, attract American institutional investors, get a higher valuation. That's the sort of thing people are talking about, basically. Those are the kind of, I can't see this happening, There's so many barriers to this sort of stuff happening. I mean, the guy who's I've relied on more heavily, who was in touch with me, was like the Finnish corporate system, like a lot of the shareholders. By the way, the biggest shareholder in Nokia, its stake in the company, do you know what it is? Can you imagine what his stake would be?
Oh, I don't know. It's Finnish pension fund or something like that.
Well, it's a Finnish state-owned, state-backed.
So I was pretty close.
With 6%.
Yeah.
6%.
It's quite diverse then, ownership.
It's diverse, but because of the way the voting system works, is no shareholder with more than 10%. It's very hard for them to vote people off, and nobody actually has more than 10%.
Because it's so distributed.
Yeah, because it's so distributed, it's very hard to affect change, is what he was saying.
I see.
And he said a lot of the shareholders are obviously, I think 25% of it was his figure, is in. I've verified a lot of this, by the way. I didn't just sort of take his word for it.
I never doubted it, mate.
But a lot of it's in Finnish hands. He said the Finns are far too conservative. They view it as a national champion. There's a national pride thing going on.
Oh yeah.
I mean, there's all these business barriers to.
Well, it's Finland's fucking IKEA or whatever, isn't it?
But I thought it was one of the reasons for writing it was I just thought it was good to reflect on where Hotard is at the moment, and none of this is his fault, obviously.
No, he's only been there 3 months.
He's only been there 3 months, but this is what he's got to look at and talk about doing. For the first time in their history, by the way, they started off in 1865 making toilet roll.
Rubber, wasn't that a thing for them back
I don't
in the
think
day?
they were rubber. I don't know. They might have
Maybe
gone through a rubber
Ericsson.
phase.
I think they might have.
But they were.
Haven't we all, Ian?
They might have gone through. We've all gone through a rubber phase. If you've ever used toilet roll, you've gone through a rubber phase. But they started off as a pulp mill, and then we're doing things like that. And they've reinvented themselves so many times in their history. Like most people today, you go and talk to your friends, they probably think of Nokia as the guys who did the small phones that you could talk on, and then they disappeared. What they do now is networks.
Yeah.
All of a sudden they have an American boss. They've actually reinvented themselves a lot. But I think it's kind of interesting to see what he can do the next chapter in their story. And we might be there. In fact, we should be there because we've got our flights booked.
Yeah. Well, so we're going
Fairly
over,
soon.
and we might as well tell people we're going over to Oulu.
Yeah.
In start of September.
Because they're opening a new R&D facility, and I just thought it was an interesting time to have a look at where they stand as they're opening that.
You thought it was an interesting time to have a segment on the podcast shitting on them before you're about to be a guest on theirs.
I just sort of saying that they've got some big challenges ahead. I think technologically, no one would doubt that what they're doing is it's up there. But
it is.
And business-wise, they're in a difficult position.
To draw a line in it, because obviously I'm not privy, and believe me, audience, I've said this loads of times, it's not like me and Ian overshare in the week between each podcast recording. I'm certainly not privy to your sources that get in contact with you. That's one of us journalists do. We often don't even share sources with like our editors or anything like that. It's quite a confidential dynamic.
Yeah.
So not having been privy to that, I just wonder what these activist shareholders want.
Well, I don't think this person who's in touch with me is not an activist shareholder.
Well, he is a bit.
Well, he's activist in terms of or it could be a she. Yeah. I don't know the person's like proper identity, but
they're activist enough to reach out to an influential telecoms journalist. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
And they're not activists like they own 5% of the company and they're trying to depose the CEO.
Yeah.
But they obviously want something. And I'm not accusing them of anything nefarious. I'm certainly not accusing you of being played because you're far too smart and experienced to be played. But I just wonder when these people get that. I had this years ago. Do you remember I wrote that story about Synchronos years ago? Called What the Hell is Going On About Synchronos just before Mary joined them, which is kind of weird.
Yeah.
And part of that was catalysed by equivalent people to the people who are getting in touch with you, getting in touch with me, going, I've seen you've written about them. Did you know about this, that and the other? And just throwing out some breadcrumbs for me. And I thought, God, that's interesting.
Well, I think the way I've done it in my story is you've always got to present it as this is what some people are complaining about. You know, this is a concern of some people. This is not necessarily what should be done at Nokia, but it's clearly something.
Here's some chit chat that's going on in the market.
And a little bit of other feedback backs it up from other people. He's on websites that are quite. He's on sort of Reddit areas where you can see loads of other people have chimed in and said, I completely agree. Someone put together a really good table of Nokia compare with Ericsson, showing how both of them have got like structural problems at the moment. So you've always got to present it as something. Yeah, there's a vested interest. He wants to make something out of his investment.
By the way, shareholders should be activist.
Yeah.
What the fuck is the point of being a shareholder?
He's not like an activist like someone with 20% who's able to actually sort of do something. But he's frustrated and he clearly wanted me to write about it. I'm sure he's happy that I have done. But well,
it'd be interesting when we go over there. Like one of the fun things about press trips, and I'm very grateful that Nokia's doing it because these things are much fewer and farther between than they used to be back in the day.
Yeah,
is you have the formal press trip bit and you might have briefings with the senior people and they've got whatever presentation and announcement they're going to make. But then you have the evening when you all go off and get pissed together and you have a chat
That's when the real news comes
about
out.
this. Yeah, well, it's not news though, is it? Because those things are always off the record. But
But you find stuff
actually, to
out.
go full circle, and this might be a good opportunity to wrap it up, unless you got any last thoughts on your story. To go full circle.
I know that. I think we should keep it going for another hour just to annoy Pierre.
Pierre started rolling his eyes at this stage. Back to the AI thing and authenticity and humans versus machines. You know, when you get to be a journalist with a degree of experience, as you and I have, part of that experience, why not? Don't worry, I've got a.
Fuck's sake.
Ian just cracked open a big tin.
Going.
Ian just cracked open a big tin and Pierre
nearly
starts
5 p.m.
dropping out.
Oh my god.
Don't worry, he'll take you to the pub with him. He always does. Those chats we have over a few beers or aquavits or whatever, we can't write them up because they're all off the record, but they inform our knowledge and they inform, for example, the bollocks that comes out of our mouth on these podcasts.
Yeah.
And again, I don't think you can replace that, and I really look forward to that. And I think that's part of what press trips are all about, are those little chats where everyone knows that you can just talk as a person to a person and be normal. And but what you have is that mutual interest, which is an interest in the technology industry, in the telecoms industry.
Yeah.
So that's that. I mean, unless you got any last things, we better wrap it up before Pierre starts throwing,
because the producer's
throwing
about to go
laptops
mad.
at our heads.
I'm packing already.
He's packing up already. Thanks, Pierre. We should be so grateful for you for even coming in.
No, but
It's your
I
holiday.
think we bid 2 hours already, so no.
It's been 2 hours. No, it's fine. Mate, it's always a bit about finding a natural time to stop, but this is it. So I think we're going to do one next week as well, again, because you've got nothing better to do, Pierre.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll say thanks for listening and make sure you join us for that one.